Okay. Welcome back, everybody. It is the announcements. Welcome back to the announcements. Here we are announcing things. This is our last session for In the Heart of Rage. I know, big sads. Big sads. But as things come to an end, new things are on the horizons, and that being said, we have Kingdom of Darkness starting next month. It's kind of a big deal. This week, on the 1st, we have At the Door of Eternity, session 12 at 8:30 p.m. US East. Then on the 12th, the 0.5 Kingdom of Darkness will happen. That's not broadcast. And then on the 15th of March, we have session 13 of At the Door, 8:30 p.m. US East. Then Kingdom of Darkness, Session 1 campaign premiere on the 26th of March, 7 p.m. US East. So, I know we're starting today's session at 8. We're moving forward about an hour for the people who are behind me in time zones. So they have a little bit of... We'll figure it out, but the slide rule will be in effect. Mainly so, everybody can get enough rest for their following work days, because it is a Wednesday night, so... that's pretty much it as far as announcements are concerned. So... Yes, tongues for Scrumgore. Oh, the Scrumgore tongues. So, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. So, let's get into this. Hey, everybody.
And then the encounter with the strange demon outside of town really didn't go well either.
No, not at all.
Let's go ahead.
Succeeded.
Let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, you succeeded. You TPK'd twice, but
let's go ahead and get started.
Mhm.
Can you guys hear me?
He's got degrees.
Now there was a funny time when I was really
Jesus.
trying to channel my inner Durance, and we came to this
They can't hear me
city,
at all. They can't hear
and
me at all. Can you guys hear me now?
yes,
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
I was screaming my head off, losing my shit utterly.
Oh no, really?
No, I wasn't.
I was about to say, you mean more than usual?
Rude. No, I was confused as to why I was being ignored, and it turned out because I had the wrong microphone turned on for this. So,
We would never ignore you willingly.
No.
well, it felt like you were. So,
Oh.
it's okay. No harsh feelings whatsoever. It was my bad to begin with. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. This is our campaign wrap up, guys. Big sads, but also big happies.
Yes.
Oh.
Depends upon which player you ask.
Well, we're gonna go through and we're gonna talk a little bit first to our original players here, and then we will talk to those of you that joined mid, and then we'll talk to everybody about stuff and things. So, there's gonna be a little bit of structure to it, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So for starters, I suppose we'll go with Darrow and Lee. Darrow, you played Renault, and Lee, you played Ben.
No, he didn't play Renault.
No,
I was about to say, wait,
you were
hang on,
Mordecai.
wrong
It's because your tag. Yeah, Darrow played Mordecai, and Lee played Ben. Yes. So the two of you are the only two remaining original player characters from when we started this campaign. So you had very different beginnings as characters, and just to give our viewers a little bit of background on the campaign, In the Heart of Rage began as began a few months after Blaze of Cruelty. I want to say like 6 months after Blaze of Cruelty or something like that, and they're ending around the same time. So you can kind of tell how many canceled sessions there were for Blaze of Cruelty. Eventually, you both caught up to each other, but one of the main themes of In the Heart of Rage was war and the brotherhood and bonds that are forged between people who fight in those wars, as well as camaraderie and loss as well. How one deals with these sorts of things. I think, for starters, we didn't really, as part of themes, we didn't really cover loss too much, and we didn't really cover the emotional aspects of that side of things too much, which I am not super happy about personally. I know a lot of that is my fault because I didn't press people too much on, what their characters were thinking or what was going on in their heads, and I didn't manage to kill as many NPCs or characters as I thought I would, just to be super frank about that. Is what it is.
I think we didn't we didn't have I would say we didn't have like a Magnus death.
Yeah.
In the sense that we didn't have one death that was like very specifically like 1/3 of the way in. Everyone has got to know each other. Everybody's like the deaths either happened very early or much later.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely accurate. Like, there wasn't, those that died did not die in a moment that would have been like emotionally poignant for the entirety of the group, right? So, which is unfortunate because like that's not the goal, right? You don't, if you're gonna have a narrative that's centered around loss a little bit, you would want any deaths to happen in a meaningful way in that regard, and I don't really think that happened, because I think the first few characters we lost were either from scheduling or inability to play, or a variety of other issues, and then that was what it was, right? So we're writing characters out of the story at that point, in a haphazard fashion, and then at the end, unfortunately, it was 2 abrupt deaths in situations where no one can stick around and really mourn. We have places to be and things to do. So unfortunately, it's like it kind of gets set aside, right? It's not really something that we covered. So that's commentary on the thematics. As far as I'm concerned, we did hit a lot of the narrative beats that I was hoping to hit. But we had less of the like, dealing with the trauma of fighting a war than I would have hoped. But maybe we can get more into that in Bib. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, let's get back to what I was trying to do before I sidetracked myself, which was speaking on our 2 longest players in this campaign, Darrow and Lee, your characters Mordecai and Ben, respectively. From the beginning to the end, your characters' personal arcs and personal stories. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about them? Did we accomplish things that you wanted to accomplish? And anything else that you want to talk about that?
Well, I loved Mordecai's journey. I feel like he was able to kind of get away from his mental stigma that he had about, I read this book and I saw it happen, so I made it happen. Because he's a little cuckoo. But through the course of the campaign, and I think Ben really kind of helped him with this, but he kind of, escaped that. And, he's in a whole lot of other trouble now, but I had a great time getting him into it.
Oh, so your character started in your character introduction, which we were not going to be doing those for chapter 2.
Mhm.
Your character introduction session started in Rosterford. It was your character's hometown.
Mhm.
Mordecai was a hermit. He lived on his own out in the woods, and he would occasionally bring game and such to the townsfolk. One of the local hunters, right? And he stumbled
Mhm.
across this building that was this ruin in the woods. Found a little dragon creature, dragon-like creature, and then went into the basement of that structure and found a hidden temple. In that hidden temple, he found a book. In that book, he found this struggle that he had. So he was kind of set up from the get-go to have a little bit of a problem, going
Yeah.
on, right? So then the guy gets drafted for the war, right? I think he was drafted, and
I want to say he signed up on his own.
he might have
I can't
signed
remember.
up. Did he? Okay.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, because I mean, again, at that point, he's feeling all this guilt. He sees all these things happening. He's like, I have to do something to repent.
Got to do something about this. Yeah, that makes sense. And we could always go back and watch it and see if that's what happened. But that in mind, it seems like he wanted to do something about it. So, end of campaign. We'll talk about like what happens post last session, right? Because we didn't really have a post last session narrative wrap up. That's kind of what we're using this session for, partially. But beginning to end, you're quite satisfied with your character's arc, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love like he's kind of like an anti-hero in my opinion, and I love it. It's fun.
Okay, so what is your favorite moment from the campaign, or for Mordecai that involved Mordecai?
That moment when he nearly lost his head, literally, because he tried to use command on the party, because he was kind of having a little bit of a crisis at the time, and that was a lot of fun. I wouldn't have been upset if it had come to blows, but I'm so glad that it didn't. Mordecai would have tried to escape one way or another rather than like try to actually kill someone. But yeah, that was a really risky moment, and I like risky stuff.
Good stuff.
Cackle.
While we're on the subject of Mordecai, does anybody have a question for Darrow or myself about Mordecai?
Something, and this is something that's interesting, is I came in so like relatively late and just got dropped in. Was oh god, I forget. Demon Catraxia?
Yes.
Catraxia. I confuse her and Corvaxia every time.
It's because
was that
I'm not good
Go
at
ahead.
naming people.
Yeah, well, that's my question: is did you come up with that character, or was that completely Darrow's creation?
She was my character. Yes.
Got it.
So, I think if I recall, Darrow, when the idea was pitched,
I'm pretty sure I just told you to like come up with something, and that'll be like completely up to you on that end if you want to make that into something.
Yeah.
I do love a DM just fuck me up special. That's very fun.
Yeah, that sounds like what happened. So it was hey, was there anything else? Because we did character creation, then it was like, hey, is there anything else you want? So, and you said, no, just fuck me up, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then I said, okie dokie, I think I'm going to give you this because this seems fun to me. And you were like, okie dokie. And that really all it was is, I'm going to give you a book, and this book is not good news. And that was pretty much the entire discussion.
That's So
And
funny.
we found out organically through the game why that book was bad news. So
And I
good
think
news
I rolled like
may be.
a 20 at one. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Our good news is a case may be. I mean, Catraxius saved our asses.
Yes. Yes. I'm trying to remember what it was. At some point, I rolled like a nat 20 or something to like learn more about the book or read it. And I think that's where I finally got her name. Was that it? If I remember right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you rolled a nat 20 to kind of better communicate or understand what the book was trying to tell you. And that kind of like, because it was originally communicating in sort of a poetic, religious sort of way, just providing you like chapters and verses and this sort of like predictive, future scripture like nonsense. And you were having a hard time deciphering that. And relating that to what was going on around you, and trying to seek guidance to that. So you made this roll. You got a nat 20, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's pop off the safeties and just run this for real. And that's when she got introduced as like a voice, right? Because then it just became now she's writing to you as a character as opposed to like a piece of literature, right? And then that relationship continued, and the more she got out of you, the stronger she became. The more, she was able to exert an influence over your mind, Mordecai's mind, and manifest. And the more that happened, the more he gave in, the more failed sanity saves he made, the stronger she got, to the point where he released her in the caldera. It was a good question, though. Yeah.
And Mordecai has a very weak mind, so let's be honest, that wasn't too difficult for her.
No, I think you started with like a 10 in your sanity, and then you wound up with a 5. So that means you failed about 5 sanity saving throws by more than 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's not about right.
That's a good question, though, D. Anyone else? No?
I suppose it was partially answered. One of my questions was where Crow came from. But I suppose the further answer as to where Crow came from is still. I suppose, like, what the fuck is is that an actual factual dragon?
That's a great question. I assumed it was, but being the fact that I did find it in that same ruin.
Well, the problem is you didn't you
Oh my God.
multi-classed, and so we didn't get Crow to grow, which would have answered the question.
Wait, you don't know
Right.
if he's a drag? Wait, I'm sorry. You don't know?
I actually my assumption was that he was a dragon, but I never confirmed it. So
One thing I do know is that Ben did make a nature check early on to say that's not a land dragon.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened.
oh shit.
Yeah.
So, like, either it's something else or it's an actual factual dragon.
Mysteries abounds. I mean, the story of how Crow came to be from like a real boring context is, he chose a Drake Warden, so I had to give him a little boy, right?
Yes.
So, sometimes your choices as players force my hand narratively. Now, I'm okay with that 90% of the time, but sometime I'm like, oh, and I'm gritting my teeth like, God damn you for forcing my hand on this one for starters. Because I think one of the big things, and I'm not sure if I shared this with this group, one of the major things that I kind of, from a storytelling perspective, have hung on to with this setting is that it's mainly a story about humans solving their problems in a fantasy world, right? So it's very tempting from a storytelling perspective to be like, oh, and these elves are came in and helped save the day, and then and then it kind of like undercuts the solve of the problem from a reader or the consumer of the story's perspective, because like, oh, they only really saw that because the elves came and helped them, and the elves are special in XYZ ways. So the humans would have never, overcome that issue. I've kind of railed against that a little bit with this setting and been like, all right, no, the humans are going to be the ones that are going to solve their problems. And I recall when I was putting together the prologue games of almost begging people to stop making elves. Because
You'll never escape from the ancient thoughtery of elves.
those little bastards keep trying to wind their way into my story, damn it.
CJ, I just want to say that for that, I respect you so deeply. Like, if you ever doubt, like, everything you're saying is like a balm to my elf-hating soul for that exact reason.
Yeah.
But then
I'll say
again, you like.
elves.
But then again, you like Scrumgore, so. We
Yeah,
already know there's
because
something weird about you.
You know what Scrumgore aren't? Played out. You know who didn't make Scrumgore? J.R.R. Tolkien. You know who, like, just the things that I could say about elves that would delve into a much deeper conversation. Anyway, the point is, fuck your little pointy-eared so-and-sos. Scrumgore for life. Thank you, CJ.
I do need everyone to know that you are playing an elf in the campaign.
And it hurts. I did it because you said I couldn't, and I'm doing it, and now it's your problem.
Tongues for elves in the chat.
And ironically, you're good friends with this fellow named Ben over there, who, as far as I can tell, really almost exclusively plays elves.
No.
No, not even a
No.
little bit true, and it's so funny.
I play them in. I played two elves. Well, half elf. Half elf is a completely different vibe because that's not about being an elf. It's about the trauma of having a family that doesn't quite mesh with itself. Joriel was a choice mostly because I wanted to try out the Plains Elf mechanics.
I thought it was a choice to yet again force my hand narratively.
No, I could have picked like an old ass human from that time period.
You could have.
But no, elves. Well, CJ knows. Getting into Ben's backstory, I put a lot into just the minutia of how Imperial Rangers patrolling the border between the Elderwood and Zategnia functions.
Yeah. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit here, if you don't mind, Dara.
Yeah, of course.
To Ben or Lee here. Ben's story. Same question I had for Darrow. For you. Thoughts on the story from beginning to end, and how that went for you, and what you enjoyed, what was, all that stuff. Go to town.
I suppose, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I think this was. I mean, I did it to myself by playing another healer and being one of the people who survived the longest, where it naturally creates a comparison to like another healer character who survived the longest, Valentinius. I think they are very different in how it went down.
Honestly, that's your own fault, and you know it.
Yes, no, I was saying 100% that is my fault for playing to type. It's not that I play elves, it's that I play healers. That's the unifying thread.
Yep.
But I liked how it went. I think, if anything, this arc definitely felt like an establishing, it felt like a prologue for Ben.
Yeah.
Like, this is the shit that he went through before he got to Sorath, or before he got to the capital, and started trying to do legal battle with Fantasy Monsanto.
Yeah. that seems to be like, once you kind of bit into that apple there, you didn't really want to let it go. and that was where you wanted your story to go. From what I could tell, right? So
I mean, you can't present a concept as tantalizing and juicy as fantasy Monsanto and not expect me to want to do battle with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know what I did.
Ironically, I was just watching the Blaze of Cruelty wrap up. I've almost finished all of it. It's like the fantasy Monsanto aspect definitely came up.
Yeah, it certainly did. So, anything about your particular arc, or Lee, or any questions others have about your particular arc and such? Just to keep things moving.
Did you always set out to be like a illegal druid? Was that the idea from the beginning, or did you just kind of wander into that as the campaign progressed?
It was I wanted to play a druid because it was a healer I hadn't tried yet. And so I picked that, and then we talked about basically like the idea is like, oh, if I'm playing a human druid, then like all of this stuff happened. I was like, oh, that is interesting. I would be, and then I'm like, okay, but then like, how do I find a way to sort of like justify? Because like I had pretty good like knowledge stats, and like it's sort of trying to explain how Ben understands a lot about druid magic based on like his stats, but also based on the fact that he's starting at a like reasonably high level, starting at 3rd level. I already have a subclass, so it's like how did I get to that point if I am not either a Farloda or I have some other way of learning the tricks of the trade. And so the simplest way would be like, who is the other like big user of nature magic, and it's wood elves.
Yep. Yep. That's kind of the box, right? So I know there's a whole lot of like, narrative out there about, oh, let your players do what they want to do. They'll have a lot more fun that way, etc., etc., etc. A lot of people are like, oh, you'll be burned at the stake if you put major constraints on your players' creativity. And I'm like, you're wrong and you know it. Because if I put constraints on my players' creativity, if I make them operate within a world and demand that they adhere to the integrity of that setting, then I think they're going to come up with some really creative ideas for how they're going to get what they want. Because I didn't say no to the character concept, half-elf druid, right? I didn't say no to that. I said, all right, explain it to me. How did this happen? You have enough access to lore. Give me something plausible to say yes to. And you certainly did, Lee. It also helps that your character in Among Desert Jewels kind of teed up a little bit of prologue for that.
Indeed.
So, you want to talk about that?
I suppose the which I fully understand. We did not have the time or the and also kind of Mordecai had cornered the market on things in people's heads talking to them.
Yeah.
So we did not get into Star Dragon and all of that bullshit. But yes, that is sort of where it came from, which is like my character, not actually an ancestor of Ben's, because it was only like a few decades ago, did this whole fucking thing by transferring his consciousness into a sea serpent, so that they could cross a waterfall and survive the encroaching demon army.
It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, was it only 5? Okay.
It's not that long ago. It was just before the invasion of alcohol.
Right. Yeah, that's only been a few years.
Yeah.
So that meant that basically, it created this access to, because again, he's a star druid, but he's not with like the Kakanites that Morgan's character's with. There's no like circle to teach him about this stuff. And so Shia obviously is like the source of a lot of astrology and the study, well, astronomy specifically, actually. And so having this connection to what happened there, and a character who sort of like pushed the envelope, pushed the boundaries of what's possible with druid magic and nature magic and elven immortality, was a good way to like get started. Alas, Star Dragon never spoke up, but Catraxia fit the bill well enough.
Unfortunately, I only have so much mental bandwidth for people in people's heads. Part of it is like, how much narrative space can I allow something like that to take up without inundating the narrative with that sort of thing, right?
For sure.
And as far
It
as...
was definitely more important to Mordecai's storyline than it was to Ben's.
Agreed, and I don't want to like undercut the importance of your storyline personally, like because yours was important as well. It's Star Dragon would never have not been in your corner though, and is therefore a much less interesting character as opposed to Catraxia, which is a form of chaos that we can all appreciate, right? You know, so
Indeed.
therein lies the difference. If I'm gonna do something like that where we have, you know, a voice in the head or some kind of, you know, extra NPC that's kind of just around doing weird fun stuff, like, I'm only gonna have one of them because more than that is too much narrative bandwidth. So, yeah, sorry about
Indubitably.
that, but it is...
No, that's fine. I think as it sort of does continue with the idea that this is like still sort of establishing what Ben is about and what's going to go on to happen with him. And in that case, I think it means that like it doesn't necessarily Ben doesn't know what the Star Dragon wants. He doesn't know that it is in fact benevolent, but the fact that it has so far been so has, and also did actually, like, the one thing he did do was be like, yeah, you should go this way.
Right.
Which makes him very inclined to trust it.
Because that worked out.
Yeah. I think the I'm just like spitballing like different possible threads that it could have gone, would be like if Mordecai hadn't multi-classed and Crow had grown, then dragons might have been a more central narrative focal point.
Oh.
And then it might have been like more appropriate to bring that thread in, but it did not go that way. So
Things that, you know, when the cue meets the ball and the balls break, all order and intent that was established goes by the wayside, right? That's a pool reference for those who've played the game before. But yeah, any questions for Ben or Lee?
I
said-
have one. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Go first.
Oh,
Go first.
no, you go first. You go first.
How about you go first?
Well, so you said that this seems like a prologue for Ben. Do you think that you might play him in another campaign in the future?
I might. I very much might. I also, the other thing that I am considering is offering Ben to CJ as a NPC. Just because, like, obviously Ben's starting at 6th level, or starting at 7th level even, which means that, like, it's going to be difficult for, like, unless the campaigns are going to be starting at higher levels in the 3rd act, there's probably going to be very few campaigns I can play him in without, like, de-leveling him.
Yeah.
And so it might make more sense for you to take ownership of Ben as just a as a NPC who has his own goals, but is like willing to help from time to time.
Right. He's busy. He's trying to take down Fantasy Monsanto. He's got to get his education, right? He's, he doesn't have time for this save the world nonsense anymore.
Indeed. But yes, Apostate, you had a question as well.
I did, and my question is, at what point did Ben... So there is a point where Ben early on is really just interested in like keeping his head down, keeping people alive, kind of occupies most of what he thinks about and what he does, and then he grows into someone who thinks a lot larger. And I just want to know, was that like something you planned for? Did that happen organically? Was there like a specific moment that you can think of where that kind of switch started to happen?
I suppose it happened the way the Doylist response is it happened because I'm playing a healer. And so I always have to think about the other players and make sure they're alive, and that sort of, I mean, it happened with Valentinius too, where you sort of naturally have to start thinking in a more leadership capacity. And I did the Watsonian response would be I kind of dropped it towards the end when things got really heavy, but there was almost like an element of like a persona that Ben would slip into in battle where like the accent would drop a bit and he would start like being very brusque and like basically he'd be acting like his mother. Which I thought was a fun way to like explain how he went from like cheerful and a little bit silly and all that kind of stuff out of fights to like very efficient, no nonsense, and focused in fights. That is to say, yes, it happened because I'm a healer and I need to make sure everyone survives. And every time I fail at that, I get very sad.
Because a friend dies.
Yeah.
Given that comment, then that's a perfect segue to the question I was going to ask. A, how annoyed did Proxy actually make Ben?
I think it's because Ben wanted to read that book too. Absolutely wanted to read that book too. I think it's sort of like time and place. And so he kind of was like, she's smart, she's useful, I appreciate what she can do. And so actually the fact that she was smart and useful and helpful made it even more aggravating when she would do those things, because then it's like, I know you're better than this.
If you would just get out of your own fucking way.
Indeed.
And then when the end there came, how distraught was Ben about not having saved everyone?
I think very distraught. I think like I said in the actual session, like he was operating purely on instinct. And so like it probably wouldn't hit him until like days later. And then he'd be like pretty torn up about it. And it would go I suppose, yeah, because he had enough time to actually like I suppose he didn't have as much time to get to know Mythlia as he did the other as even Praxia, but more time than like the other party members who died earlier on. And so I think it would be I think it would be sort of like he mourns Mythlia, and that triggers him to like start seriously thinking about Praxia's death more.
Well, on one hand, it's nice to have given him something to think about. On the other hand, maybe not so nice, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Okay. That's all the questions we have for Lee right now about Ben. Let's go ahead and scoot on to Alathada. So your character joined us mid-campaign, I would say, maybe like a little bit before the halfway mark. You were kind of filling in after significant attrition in the beginning. You didn't have the benefit of a introduction session. Your character, by nature, being an Ith, didn't have much of a backstory because they had only just recently been awakened, I guess is the best word for it. Freed, really, released from, a slavery that is both profane and most heinous, right? Complete domination, mind and body by an evil that is really, that's probably the best way to put it, by an evil, right? And so, curiosity was kind of the running theme for her, but curiosity also killed the cat. I'm not sorry for saying those words. That's what happened.
Right. I was going to say that myself, but
Yeah.
Karvakia almost said as much.
Yeah.
At one point, they get paid. So
yeah. So, let's talk about your character's arc and what you thought of it, favorite parts of it, whatnot. Go ahead.
Yeah. We'll do, since she was earlier, Proxia makes the best place to start. I mean, she was originally, the concept was, since she was a bard, she was kind of like, here's my people. She was a kind of a bit of a folk hero among them, trying to figure out how do I come up with, like, put together like a history or some kind of lore or some kind of folklore for her people. And that was always first and foremost in her mind, is like, there's all these things that humans have. There's all these things that like the Corinthians and the other races that have been here for a while, all these things that they had, like they can go back and say, well, we've had this happened to us, and this happened to us, and this happened to us. And like, that was something her people didn't have. And so that was kind of her goal. And if she would have survived, she would have probably continued doing that. And so it's like, well, what all information can be gathered to assist with that? And even though she comes across as very selfish sometimes in her pursuit of that, admittedly so, it's like that was the driving force. Like, what can we do? And also then, what can we do that isn't necessarily like, oh, humans and elves or whatever have already done this? And so she's trying to build that. And the fact that she ends up going out because it's like her curiosity, and here's this book and here's this potion that's, well, nobody's heard about, and etc., was incredibly appropriate. It's like, I would have been much more upset if she'd just been like okay, like, kill my bone chewer or something. It's like, okay, it's kind of a waste. But she went out in a very story appropriate fashion.
Okay. Suppose it is now the question and answer portion of our exam.
Well, no,
Oh.
we have the other half of this.
Oh, well, I wasn't ready
Given
for
that
our myth lie yet, but
Given that so far as I know, I'm the only person that's had two characters die in the same adventure.
yeah, I was just gonna do it like chronologically. But if you want to step with myth lie first, that's
Yeah, I might as well answer both halves of the
Yeah,
question.
well,
So we don't.
While you're doing it now, go ahead.
Yeah. Look, I'm already talking. So good. with Laia, and so yeah, so she was like, okay, well, what do we put here? And it's like, well, I'd already here was something new and etc. with Proxia because there hadn't been an ice before. It's like, well, I did something new. It's like I might as well do something else new, and so came up with the idea of, well, okay, I could play one of the children of Al-Hadun, and the concept there is, of course, they're really young, and they had been like adopted out to people in Cruith and things like that after they'd been rescued, and she had been ended up being like being taken care of by some folks at one of the temples, and religion just wasn't for her, as well as the fact that that at least in cities it wasn't so bad, but other places, like people looking at her like she was like a demon or things like that, and here she was, this teenager, very traumatized by all that, and so she goes off and kind of like runs away from home, thinking, well, life's, and sees more of this, and it's like, well, almost on the verge of like, well, life's pointless, and then ends up meeting meeting our former quartermaster, which that seemed like that was the best way for them to get some sense snapped into her. It's like, well, the people that did this to you and etc., you could do something about them, but you can't do it on your own. And so that kind of pointed her to then being military. So unlike Proxia, who the military was a complete accident, it wasn't anything she'd planned. It's just she kind of fell into it. With Laia was very much like, here, okay, I'll go do this. It's gonna keep me alive. I guess there's a reason for living. Goes to join the military, and of course, doesn't really know a whole lot. She's very, very, she is very young, and so I'm sure she then turned around and drove people nuts by the, well, you're going wandering off or whatever. It's like, well, what about this? Do you not understand? It's like, well, I'm kind of new at this. How do you do this military stuff? But then, so she was kind of so that was kind of the fun aspect there. The fact that she found the really cool sword, which hopefully somebody will get to use, is nice. But I wasn't happy with the getting killed by by 3 friendly demons. That was, so her death is a little bit more annoying to me personally than Proxy's in that regard. It's like, this isn't the house she wanted to go out. It's like she's like sitting there hoping she get another turn, because it's like, okay, if I get another turn, I'm going to do like lightning ball or ice ball or something, because use my last meta magic to do that, and instead of sculpting the spell around myself, it's like, I may end up killing myself, but hopefully I take these demons out with me.
Yeah.
But it's like no, okay, I get killed by demons. Okay, exactly. This is most unsatisfying.
Unfortunate, yeah, because it's tragic, and from from a narrative standpoint, right? Because she's young, she was talented from a magical standpoint. There's all this going on, and then she meets this end in this battle. She doesn't get to know, of course, the fruits of her labor, right? Because it was Mithlaia's help that assisted in bringing Kovaresh to heal in that battle, right? We couldn't have done it without her. And because of that, we have the result for that fight that we have, which is better than it could have been, right? I mean, that fight was razor's edge. It was nasty. So
and plus she had the fun there. It's like all the emotional trauma. It's like this stuff here. It's like, this is because of this stuff is the reason why my kind is here to begin with, and so a little bit conflicted about the whole situation there. It's like, okay, on one hand, this will be good for humanity, but on the other hand, this stuff was the reason I'm here. This is like evil, or at least came from evil. Maybe it's being used for good now, but the whole that whole like research project there is not something that was like an easy emotional thing for her.
Yeah, I mean, real tragedy for her. Probably felt like she had come back to right where she started, right where her horrors began, right? So
It's kind of like, whereas even though it's like, okay, well, so much for having been saved from Al Hudud, because it's essentially I'm dying from anyway in the same sort of place.
Yeah. Any questions for Alethana about her characters? Any great moments that you guys want to share or want to ask about? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I have a question actually. And my question is, I think if there is a running theme between the two characters of yours, Alethana, that I got to experience, it was I'm gonna throw it a little kind of a really dated reference, but it's almost like the Dexter's Lab Dee Dee of it all. Of
Oh my
I
God.
know I shouldn't touch this thing. Oh God, but I'm gonna touch this thing.
It's the button push.
Yeah, it is push the button. And I just gotta ask, like, I can understand it from Elethana's point of view. I did get to know her, I think, a little bit better than I did Praxia. Where, like, you know what? Oh, sorry, Mythlia. Yeah, Mythlia. I'm just bad. It's just bad brain up here. But Mythlia, I understood it in a way, because Mythlia is like, there's things you can excuse from a teenager, or things maybe you can't excuse, but you understand how they got there. But what was it in Praxia that was just so determined to drink potion of die badly? Like, what was it in her that made that quest so relentless?
Well, I mean, given that she had read the book, she had the compulsion to do it. First of all,
Yeah, that was baked into the book.
Fair.
It was a trap.
So avoid so as soon as I had got that piece of information, it's like I do, like, okay, as soon as if she can get a chance to, as soon as she can get a chance to, this kind of has to happen. It would not make narrative sense if she hadn't at least tried.
That's fair.
Yeah, and plus it's like hey, well, this is also something that this is new, and this is something that's, well, people haven't done this before, so this is kind of a novel experience. It's like I could write about this, or etc. This is something people haven't accomplished, but the Ice have, and
the hubris of someone who is on a mission for others and is smart enough to be able to recognize something of interest, yet not cautious enough to not make the dinosaurs. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I see what you're driving at.
yeah, it's... I'm sure, like, Praxia didn't feel, as the character, not you as the player, Alethana, I'm sure Praxia didn't feel that it was hubris in the moment, because no one does. Or that she felt the risks were worth the potential reward. Or that there was no risk whatsoever, because it's just alchemy, what could go wrong, right? And unfortunately, your saving throws were not great, and it ended badly. So
yeah. And then even if they had been great, did I even succeeded in the alchemy check to start with? So there were a lot of unanswered questions there.
yeah, and that whole trap was baked into the campaign from the beginning, right? 'Cause I think I've mentioned this before in like an after session discussion. That whole trap with the book and the potion was baked into the campaign from the beginning, and it was just a matter of like who was going to set it off, right? And when the campaign first started, I was fairly certain it was going to be Ben. That's because Alethana, you hadn't joined us yet, and Ben fit the type. So in my head, I was thinking it's either Ben or Mordecai who's going to do this. Because these are the two people who are going to, be of interest in this. I thought perhaps Connor might too, right? But Connor was a little bit more, as far as I remember, cautious about stuff. Mordecai doesn't have a cautious bone in his body. And,
Yeah.
And when he turns to caution, it's actually just outright fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Ben has enough intellectual curiosity to, poke around some books. What harm could they do, right? And fall face forward into that trap. Alathana.
But I think by that point, Ben had been infected by my healer must keep everyone alive brainworms enough.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm glad that no such worms exist in good old Dart.
So yeah, it kind of, after Praxia joined and then became infected with Lee's brainworms, it kind of was just a trap almost perfectly tailor-made for Praxia, unfortunately. And she fell into it, and the rolls were bad. It's almost like the banquet, right? The banquets, you guys didn't have to do it all, and then that went real poorly until it didn't. So
Yeah, it's like we almost completely lost everything. It's like,
yeah,
well, when you have optional content that is like worse than the rest of the campaign, it's like, okay.
you'll never know when the content's optional unless I tell you it on the tin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a fair. Any other questions for Alathana?
Well, I actually have a couple questions about what ifs.
Oh no, we're not doing. I mean, are they what ifs particular to your character, or are they just like
Yes.
the general questions? Okay.
Yes.
So if they're just about your character, I reserve the right to not answer.
Exactly, yes. There were other books there besides just the alchemy book.
Yeah.
So would the result have been similar? It's like, okay, I'm gonna read this one or one of the others instead of the alchemy book, or
So
if she'd have found a way to like hang out there in the library and like read multiple volumes.
that was also part of the trap, right? So if you had spent a lot of time just picking up books and reading them, picking them up and reading them, you would have gone more and more into the profane knowledge trap. In which case we would have been making multiple aging rolls for you. And
Which would not have been good for an ice.
right. We don't know how long Ith live on average. Until they, are fully old age or elderly and would die of natural causes. But that could have been also a way Praxia could have died right there, is gotten too involved with the books, aged too rapidly, it becomes bones and dust right before your very eyes. So
Yeah, because that's one of the things she was like thinking about. Like, if I make it out of here alive, I'm gonna have to remember where this place is because I'm gonna have to like camp out here for a few months or maybe a couple of years or etc. And just read more of these.
yeah.
So she would have definitely fallen into that trap.
Yeah.
And then I have to ask about these strings. Like, how much did they actually know?
So
I spent forever trying to wake them up, and then when I finally did, I didn't get to at least try out learning a lot from them.
So this was the secondary, because we talked about the Star Dragon and Catraxia, right? This is the second thing that was semi-sentient or sentient that the campaign couldn't support the bandwidth of, right? And so I had to reduce its ability to communicate. Otherwise, it would have been just like, well, where's mine? Where's my dolly, right? For our other two players here, D and Apostate. So we couldn't have too many of those things being fully sentient and interacting. I was already like putting the Star Dragon on the back burner. I think we talked about it too with the strings. They were inhabited, but there's no telling what they would know or what they would have known, right? So
They
Um,
could have been just like a, hey, this is kind of a fun little gadget. They kind of communicate, but they're not very bright.
yeah, or it could have been just like this is a creature that can only convey things in like sounds and emotions in that fashion, which definitely I suppose would be frustrating for a character like Praxia who desperately wants profane and arcane knowledge that no one else has, you know, the most esoteric and you know, forbidden information in an obsessive way, right? Like, definitely is there to drive her insane.
Yep.
Which worked, you know, because I could feel your. I mean, I'm not sure where the player frustration began and ended with that, but you know, I could tell Praxia was frustrated with it. And I mean, the solution to the puzzle of how do I get this thing on was simple. You just dump some spell slots into it, but how to get information out of it? Was there information to get out of it? I'm gonna shrug and say that's not something
We
I'm
don't know.
willing to say. So
You're gonna wink and nod and nod.
no winking. No, just I'm not willing to tell you. Straight up.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't expect to find out, but it's like it's like, what was it just there to fuck with me? I guess was the question.
Some stuff is right, and I usually admit that in the very end here. This was here to like, because you have that itch too for like Lee does to extract as much crap out of me as possible, like I'm some kind of oil well, right? I get that, and you know, you saw how useful Catraxia was, and like, well, you know, in my character creation, I'd like something similar. I'm like, okay, all right, but you were making a deal with a genie, you know, a classic Jinn, and that classic Jinn monkey paw deal was, all right, yeah, you can have your semi-sentient thing or your sentient thing. Here you go. Can't talk to you.
It's not very useful.
Nope. Nope. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. There was a puzzle to it. It could have been solved given enough time and effort and like willingness to bring other people in, right? To spend that time and effort. And if you guys could have stayed in Corvoxia where you had a more, well, I'll put it this way, where you had a less hostile library, you know, to kind of cross-reference materials, you might have been able to solve it. But that was, you know, that was dealing with the doomsday clock that the campaign had at the same time. Whether or not you were willing to risk Ekergad the Impaler catching up to you. So that there's all that. In the interest of...
Yeah, it's nice to know that our friends that we overheard in the clearing that they existed elsewhere, and nice to know from the wrap up for Blaze of Cruelty that our friend from the clearing is the same one that the folks there ran into.
You can't help spoiling things, can you? Oh my god. Moving along.
I mean, it's available on YouTube already.
I know. Just teasing
So I'm
you.
not spoiling anything.
Just teasing you. These guys might not have watched it yet. Moving along. In the interest of time.
It was kind of interesting that the guess that was made over there about what was going on without having watched At the Door of Eternity.
Alright. Pump the brakes on that.
Yep.
We have two others to get to. D and Apostate, you both joined at the same time. Thankfully filling out my desperately falling apart roster. Whichever one of you wants to go first, you know what the question is, you know what we're going to be talking about. Take it away, one of you.
If you're not gonna go first, I can go first.
Yeah, ladies first.
Yeah, why not? It was an interesting. I think Eliana ended up being a lot more. She's an interesting character to have played because when I came into the campaign, I knew very little about the world. I knew we were being pulled in on a pretty short timeline. And I also knew that it was going to be combat heavy. And I didn't feel like I had the time to put together a spellcaster or something a little bit more complex that was going to be able to run effectively in a combat campaign. So it was very much the decision of like, okay, what can I build that is going to wreck house in a combat focused campaign and work well for a combat focused campaign, which is playing a little off type for me, because usually, I mean, I made fun of Paladin before, or Apostate before, but I'll usually play an elf, or I'll usually play like something that's a little bit more like a rogue, or a little bit more spellcasty, a little bit more quippy on that side. So wanted to do something that was a little bit more fighting centric, something a little bit more against type. She ended up being something that we didn't really get a ton into in her backstory. Is she grew up like a middle daughter of like House Jezebel, and which is a magical family, and she does not have any. So you have this character who feels super out of place, felt super out of place growing up, felt super out of place trying to go to the university and learn magic, and ended up finally landing in a military combat role where she felt competent, but I think what I tried to play into was like, was competent but didn't always feel it. Which I think was a nice little reflection of how I felt for starting out the game, of like, I don't know a ton of what I'm getting into. So it's not that she was at the end of the day, I think it was like a week, 2 weeks total, timeline wise, that she would have actually been on screen for. And I don't know how much a person can change in like a week or 2 weeks. So
it's either a lot or not at all, right?
Yeah. So I think she ended up being, I'm usually like a character role-playing forward player. I think she ended up being a lot more static and a lot more reserved than I tend to go for characters, which was a nice change of pace. I liked her a lot. I think probably like, and maybe this is a cop-out, I think like my favorite scene with her actually was like the latter half of that last fight. If only because like narratively, like, was very in the rhythm, like was firing on all cylinders, and like the crunch had finally hit a ceiling where I was like, oh yeah, like this is a character who is dealing some damage, and can kind of carry this role that she's getting promoted into. So I think that was probably my favorite moment for her, just because that felt kind of like a nice capstone in that way. And I think she came out of it not like lacking that reservedness or lacking some of that nervousness, but definitely like ready to outgrow it. And I think that's probably what's coming up for her down the pipe. So it was fun. It was good. It was a good little character exercise in that way. And I'm excited to play something that's a little bit more start to finish, I think, next time around. I wish I had more time, or wish earlier on with her had felt more. I wish earlier on when starting to play her had not felt as like hadn't been as reserved, I guess, but I think it ended up working out on a character perspective. So it's all in all good, but I think I'm definitely looking forward to that next time around.
I think you were certainly the character's mirror, right, for this campaign. Like you said, entered, didn't really know a whole lot other than the fire hose briefing I gave you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And here's Eliana, who like is a fish out of water, because even her family's perspective is the one that she grew up with is not hers, because she lives a different life than most of them, because most of them are magical in some fashion, right? You know, the Jezebel family is probably number 2 when it comes to magical prowess in the country, number 1 being the royal family, right? They're related too by blood. So there's all that. So there's the pomp and the circumstance, and all of that is a very foreign environment to her. Ergo, the parallel there with you coming in as I don't know much about this setting. I'm gonna play a fighter.
Yeah, and I think like it's I feel like when you're coming into something, there can be value to like leaning into your own, not even background as a player, but just like your own like emotional state as a player of like what is happening and what is going on.
Yeah.
That worked well here.
I think so too. Yeah. I think to kind of round that out too, in the final fight when you were facing down Kovaresh, with the captain nowhere to be seen, killing Scrumgore left and right, dying off screen, right? You had stepped into her place in that moment, in that fight. You had stepped into her shoes and were swinging away like she does, getting fat crits and dealing mega damage left and right, like she had been throughout the entire campaign. And now that she was gone and she passed the commander and her had passed that mantle at a sort of not direct way because you hadn't passed the exam yet, but had given you their blessing as a character to take that spot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In practicum, you took the spot, which I think was a wonderful way to like sign off on Eliana's chapter here, just to kind of underline and finish that off.
Yeah.
That was great.
And in that way, I think I feel similar to Lee in that like this felt like a prologue for a character who will hit like this, like that last battle was her finally hitting a stride, right?
Right.
And I think that's exciting too.
Yeah. Any questions for D here about Eliana?
Actually, we have a compliment for Eliana, actually.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, you may normally play, like, magic users, things like that, from someone who historically plays skill monkeys or magic users themselves. I definitely understand that stepping into another out of your comfort zone being a bit of a stretch. But you essentially brought us exactly what we needed at that point in the campaign. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was all. It couldn't have went any better if our friendly DM here had like came and told you like, here's this character. This is what the party needs. It's like you just nailed it, and then it was really nice there in that final fight where we had up to that point always brought Caraxia along because we knew she was our hyper carry and we just needed to buff her and keep her alive. Right? But it's like, okay. And then so she was outside. It's like, okay, now this is entirely now player driven. We're not using our NPC as a crutch anymore. We're really doing this. And so it had a really nice feel to it to have that. And so I really, really thank you for creating this character.
I think that's so sweet. I knew vaguely coming in, like, obviously Lee and us are friends in real life outside of the game. I had talked to CJ a little bit about like, because I was on the fence. I was like, what is currently in the party? Like, what is kind of a missing hole? So I knew generally that like there wasn't a good frontline fighter in the party comp as it was going to be. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like I've never done it before, or I haven't done it in a long time. Outside of like running NPC blocks at DMing myself. So I was like, fuck it. This would be really good for me to sit on the other side of. I think fighting characters or like fighting heavy characters, like it's not that they get a bad rep in these kinds of settings, get a bad rep in like D&D in general, but they're certainly not as flashy on paper as like a skill monkey or like a pure magic user, or even a half magic user. So, but then they really sneak up on you and just how much they can dole out hit after hit after hit.
No, that's perfectly accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what, screw it. I've never done this before. I knew I was coming in as like, well, I'm here for Lee has asked me very kindly to play this. It sounds like the party is in a hard spot. I don't know how much longer it's going to run for, so I don't know how much character like arc growth or role playing I'll get out of it. So if I'm gonna do it, I might as well play something that's a little bit against type and is learning something mechanically for myself, but that is also still helpful. So that's where I came at it from. I am glad that it was in fact a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little apprehensive at first that our friendly DM here had given us a someone that was higher rank than we were. As like, hey, okay, we just add a new character and they outrank all of us, but it turned out to work out really well.
That was
Yeah,
necessary from my perspective. Continue, D. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it. I mean, CJ definitely gave me that context up front of like, hey, this makes sense lore wise, but like, you can do some fun story beats with it, but please don't overuse it. Please don't abuse it.
Do not run roughshod over your fellow players. You're not their boss.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think in some way having Corvaxia there as a DM tool, right? Like makes that impossible for Eliana to do that in the long term because Corvaxia would have put a really quick end to that. But all of that being said, like in a fun way, I think that kind of played into that feeling of like a little bit of uncertainty in her, because I was also like, oh, like fuck, like I've never played with some of these people before. I don't want to come off like, I don't want to like, I'm not gonna like sit here and like role play like, yeah, like do this in combat when other people have other stuff that they're gonna do and a group synergy that I haven't been there for. So it played out well, and I'm glad to hear that it was well received.
Just as planned.
We're just glad that Lee has good friends.
Certainly are.
Lee has great.
And that'll apply to both of y'all, so I don't have to repeat it again when it's Apostate's turn.
Any other questions for D? Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and switch over to Apostate. Apostate, floor's yours.
Just a quick recap on the precise question. I don't want to get lost in the weeds.
The question is, your character, their arc, how do you feel about it? What's your takeaway? What are the big moments you enjoyed? Roleplay wise, story wise, combat, etc. You know, the things that you really want to remark on about your character and what happened and that stuff. So, really it. That's really the question.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Gush for me.
Same boat as D when it comes to entering the campaign late. I struggle sometimes with D&D. So I definitely knew, given what I had learned about the game and what Lee had told me about it, because Lee really does like to talk about the campaigns and all the cool stuff happening in them. I knew that I wanted to do something with a bit more utility than just a martial class, because D&D is not kind to most martial classes. And I didn't want to go quite as high of a ceiling as like a full spellcaster. So a martial with a bit of something, with a bit of a twist, worked fine. I've loved the Blood Hunter class since it came out. I haven't actually gotten a chance to play one. I think no, I really don't think I have actually all the way through ever. So this was exciting. I also wanted to, learn a bit more about the world that you created, CJ, and I wanted to tie in with it a little bit. So I went for Kakanite. Plus, turning into a giant panther is just cool. I mean,
Yeah.
like I don't know if there's any more that I can bring about that.
Literally
but
no
when I was-
downsides.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now all you need is a lizard wizard to carry around when you do that.
honestly, yeah, it'd be perfect. I think given that the campaign was, pitched as like a game that's heavy on tactics, that is what I came in counting on, and knowing that it was like a serious sort of almost a war game in many ways. That's in my wheelhouse. And I also, though, here's the thing. I came in and I wanted to create a character who, while not laden with the most responsibility in the same way that like a captain or a lieutenant would be, at least understood how things were, how to get by in the military. So I made Lillian. Obviously, she has her own goals with her own order that happens to dovetail really nicely with the current war on demonkind right now. But I wanted someone who's a bit more ordered, and who understood the value of fitting into a structure, instead of railing against it. So there were a lot of very interesting role-playing opportunities coming into a situation where I would say like 90% of the cast has totally thrown any kind of like discipline or order out the window and is doing their own thing. And you're watching your captain kind of age in real time because you can't just kill all of them or discipline all of them, that you wouldn't have anybody left. So that was fun to walk into. I liked the tension that Lillian, as a demon hunter, got with Mordecai, who was just completely lost in the thrall sauce, so to speak. That combined, and the funniest thing I think for Lillian was if Mordecai had been doing this from a place of malice and scheming, that would have been so easy for her. Like, she'd be like, okay, yeah, I know what to do here. This is pretty straightforward. We'll just, this guy's got to die, obviously. But the real kicker for me there was Mordecai's absolute just I hesitate to call him a himbo, but he kind of is.
Oh no.
Mhm. Absolutely. No, I wear my himbo badge on my sleeve. Oh.
Proudly?
Oh, wait, we're talking about Mordecai. Okay, yes.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah. just Mordecai being like just very confidently explaining why he's absolutely, to borrow a quote from a dear friend, fucked the whole farm on this one. And just standing there with the weight of the literal demonic presence that sits on his shoulder when he does that as a demon hunter was just really fun. I actually do have to give you credit, CJ. We didn't play with it much beyond like once or twice because, to your credit, it would have been frustrating. But you did give me a voice to talk to as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did. I forgot. This was like, see, this is the problem. I don't have the bandwidth to maintain all these fucking extra voices. Like, out of everybody, D, I feel like I owe you a voice in your head.
I'm good. I'm really good.
Because like you had a ghost, and I used her maybe twice.
Yeah.
And it was really just to like kind of change the tone of the moment that I used her. Really to just like sort of like put an extra screw to things. But yeah, continue. Sorry, I interrupted you. Because I forgot.
No, I honestly did too. And then hearing you talk about that tonight, like of like how many freaking like invisible voices do I need to give to people? I can't keep up with all of them. That totally makes sense. It was interesting because I think Lillian's a very serious character, and she's willing to within a military structure. She's willing to like she'll screw around a little bit, but well within established parameters of acceptability. So when you have a character who is looking at the absolute chicanery that the squad is pulling right now, looking at Mr. Demonic Possession Victim of the Year casually throw a book of binding into like a lava flow. And Lily, the thing is, as much as like I'm not here to throw a table into disarray, and again I have like no no axes to grind with anyone here at the table. I'm not out for anyone's real blood, but Lillian deadass would have killed Mordecai, depending on how things had gone. Like, she was at her limit, and that limit, once crossed, was going to be, all right, you get a panther mauling. Like, that's it.
I can only imagine trying to. Was it you or Eliana that I tried to command? I can't
I think
remember.
it was me. I think it was
It was you.
Eliana.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure that didn't help.
No, that really didn't.
No.
So, like, yeah, it was good, I think, CJ, when you use the ghost to bring that sort of like a lighter, more understanding or more humanizing, I think, element to Lillian, because otherwise Lillian she had to be a hard ass with these people, so she that's kind of where she was, and seeing a ghost just have like a little mope out on her was really fucking funny.
I always remembered her in the worst possible moments for you too. So,
Yeah, you joined too late to get to participate in the entire Gerboxia has to punish characters for doing completely horrible things they shouldn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you have more to gush about apostate, or are we at the question and answer portion of the exam?
One last little bit just to bring the whole arc is that I don't think Lillian changed very much over the course of her arc, but that's okay, because I don't think she's really in a position where that sort of change can happen yet for her. It was cool to see her get a little closer to the others in her squad, I guess to the others in the other sergeants. I did, despite it all, I did try to, and I hope it came across, she did have a bit of an attachment to Eliana.
Yeah.
That came through. I didn't. Sorry, I shouldn't cut you off.
No, go ahead.
We never talked about it. Like at the table or otherwise. I definitely caught that. I just thought it was kind of funnier if like Eliana was like didn't notice. Like I kept expecting at some point for Lillian to do something. I think at some point Eliana, especially if they're all going to the same place, I think she would have figured it out eventually. But I definitely caught that, and that just might be me knowing you. But I definitely caught that.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, so that's kind of where our arc went. I'm happy about that. I think I've mentioned a few of the role playing opportunities that I was. It's so funny because it's not that I like being mean, but I do love Nicholas Angel shows up to the Stanford Police Department, you know? Like I think that moment is always very funny to do, as long as everybody else at the table who is playing the Stanford Police Department understands that there's no actual bad blood, but like at some point someone who understands how the military works has to be like, all right, so you guys are all so like you're beyond the pale here. So I want to thank you all for putting up with that. But yeah, that's I think all I got to say on it.
It's very much if you're a dog owner, it's what's in your mouth energy.
Oh God, it is.
You know, because like you hear something going on over there, like all right, it's either a perfectly innocent dog chewing on their bone, and you look over and it's what's in your mouth. What is that? And then they're like, oh no. And they're really mean well. They don't realize that what they're doing is wrong because they're a dog, right? Etc. So it's that energy and I found it endlessly entertaining that when Lillian would lose her shit, the captain's over there like, oh, thank fucking God somebody else realizes how bad this is. You know? Etc. So, question and answer portion of our exam. Questions for apostate regarding Lillian. No?
I am curious to know.
Okay.
What is the burden of circumstance that would take for Lillian to try the potion of die horribly?
That's a good one because I did think about it. But I think if you all had like fucked the whole farm on that last encounter we did, and things were going really, really bad, and everybody was dying around her. If Lillian ever got backed into a corner, where the choice was, fail the mission and get murdered by, Kovaresh or some other suitably terrifying demon, or drink this potion, maybe you die, but there is a chance that you become something at least scary enough that you could kill him. I think she would do it.
Interesting.
Assuming the potion will still had any capabilities to it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Cool. All right. Any other questions? Or are we good to move on to the next
The
thing?
the order that you're part of, that's part of that's kind of like one of the aspects of the class, I think. But is that something that like something like that would have already existed in Cruith or CJ and Drew, how you created things, or is this something that well we got to come up with this order so we can make the character work?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. So obviously, like, the class kind of forced our hand a bit when we were doing character creation. The question came up of, are there orders like this, etc., and the answer is generally yes. However, Rune's one of those places that's atheistic by design. I don't use the word secular because that implies something specific. They're not. They don't believe in the. It's not that they don't believe in the gods. It's just that they abhor them. So they're more anti-theistic than atheistic. It's different. Anyway, they do have religious orders within the boundaries of their borders. Those religious orders are not allowed to proselytize. They're not allowed to spread their religion. Not allowed to evangelize or anything like that. They are allowed to preach to their own, and they are allowed to follow their own path, so long as it doesn't interfere with the business of the nation or with any citizens' rights or the way that they live their lives. Right? You're not allowed to constrain someone's choices by saying these are our laws, and we will punish you in accordance to our religious laws if you don't follow these steps, right? So that's a crude thing. Like, if you have a religious order and you say, oh, no eating cheese on Mondays, and then you go out in the village and you see somebody eating cheese on a Monday, and you kill them for it, you are in trouble. You cannot hide behind your religion. The local garrison will find and kill you, and they will kill your entire religious order, root and stem. That's how much they hate it, and that's how much that they're willing. That's how far they're willing to go to keep that stuff from getting out of hand. There, part of that has a lot to do with the history of the nation. It has a lot to do with their stance on these various gods. You have to understand, part of the problem is they don't always know who's speaking when some spirit or deity is contacting someone, right? Because a lot of the time they can be claiming to be someone, but they're really someone else. They can claim that they're like, oh, I'm a representative of Roysa, but really it's a demon and it's a representative of Holomon, right? So you've got there's that going on too. So when Apostate pitched the Blood Hunter and the order thing, I said, okay, I'm gonna leave part of this in your hands. These are the rules. It's got to fit the rules. You bring me something, we can talk about it, and we can make use of it. And I think, Apostate, you did a really good job bringing that in near the end, because that was the moment for it, right? It didn't make much sense for Lillian to be throwing her weight around as this member of this order of demon hunters, etc. When there are no other demon hunters in her order around to back her up, right? What happens if she gets misconstrued for being some kind of religious zealot? So, I think that worked out really well. And from my perspective, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I put a lot on Apostate's plate to come up with the nitty-gritty of it for this particular order. but I did provide them with the rules and with the backdrop. So,
And it went really well. That was a really nice touch. That here you go, talk to the person about what's going on, etc. That was a really enjoyable scene to watch play out. It kind of definitely gave some more flavor to the character versus just okay. They showed up and they have all these cool abilities and they get on to the rest of us for not being military enough. So it was nice to see that okay, there is some actual like actually see some of that backstory, because I'm not sure we got to see a lot of the backstory prior to that really. And that's probably just because of when how late in the campaign they were introduced, but
yeah.
so it was nice to get to see that, and so the work that you put in there is definitely appreciated, Apostate.
Well, thank you, and also CJ, thank you because that scene was also that was a good scene to tie it together. You're right that like, it was tricky because again coming in late, but also finding a moment in the situation that we were in to introduce that. And I think maybe if I have any scant regrets, it's like not finding in little ways to like work any of that in or like hint at any of that a little sooner. But I think it worked out pretty nicely. When I was thinking about the order, given the constraints that CJ had said, I'm a big believer that actually the constraints or the rules that you put down for creation are like really what drives innovation and creativity amongst players, amongst even DMs, and um, having to create an order that was against demons was super interesting because I couldn't stray into the religious side of it. There'd be no way anybody in Corinth would have taken them seriously enough to do what they needed to do. I love the game Bloodborne. I had just finished watching Castlevania again, and it did strike me how the Belmonts in Castlevania always go through these periods where people just turn on them and kill them. And a lot of that does come from a place of religious zealotry. And in Bloodborne, there is a sort of coven of hunters called the Confederations, or the Confederation, and despite the unfortunate name, they are the only group of hunters in that setting that still has any presence, because their unifier is, hey, you know, work together, despite your different like outlooks, pursue the hunt together. And I thought about that, so I wanted this order to be less of a religiously rooted crusade against demons, and more about, probably in their history, maybe they have gone through periods where, you know, religion has backfired on them. And CJ's point about the world rings true. The quote unquote angels and the demons kind of play along extremely similar lines. Their marketing is just a little different. And if you are an order dedicated to, you know, purging demons, the other team is not a reliable way to do that. So that leaves you with, you know, self-reliance. And if you can integrate yourself into a military that might be a little bit wary of your structure at first, but, you know, if you can get those ideological similarities across, you have a very powerful ally, and you have a lot more security than the days of yore, where a certain twist of, you know, religious faith or a certain god decided you were a bit too troublesome and had to be weeded out. So that was kind of in my head as I was thinking of how they operated.
Well, being someone who's going to be playing a cleric in the near future in one of these games, I could just I can't even imagine the shenanigans that our friendly DM here is going to throw my direction.
Speculate all you want.
Yeah, because I know religion is not really a popular thing in Cruin, so it doesn't require much speculation to know that there will be some.
Yeah. I suppose we have now entered a different portion of the exam here. I have some questions for you guys as a group, and those questions are fairly straightforward. They start as, who is your favorite NPCs? What were your favorite moments? And yeah, let's start there. Whoever wants to go.
I just want to point out, how can you ask us who our favorite NPC is when Corvaxia saved
Yeah.
our collective asses so many
My favorite NPC is
Oh,
Catraxia.
All I was about to say, there's no way Corvaxia could be your favorite NPC unless you want to spend the rest of your days suffering in eternal torment instead of enjoying her good graces.
I'm sorry, hot demon mommy. I apologize. I misspoke. Please forgive my
I
sins.
wanted what I wanted more than anything was for Ben to become able to see Catraxia, so that they could have cat fights more easily.
I felt real disappointment in my heart when I found out Corvaxia was married.
Oh.
I like if it were a different type of campaign, like it would have been on site. Like I'd have been like, that's new mission goal. I understand. So I felt real. I was like, maybe if Eliana was not quite so like astir, and I knew kind of what Apostate was doing with Lillian, so I was like, I don't need to chase. It's fine. And then I felt real disappointment in my heart.
Well, and I feel bad that was something that you didn't realize, because those of us that had been around slightly longer that would actually ran into a nice chunk of her family, since we'd had the big fight at the Carvoxia Duchy. It's like we'd been there and met these people and etc.
I don't think I fully realized it until she explained that she was retiring. I was like, oh man,
Sometimes
Damn it.
you're willfully ignorant of those kinds of things. You're too busy staring at how pretty they are and whatnot. And you're like, and
I
then
don't actually know what her face looks like. I just know that she wears her helmet. I'm like, I don't know, gang. It's fine.
but yeah, I get you.
But we've seen character art of her without her helmet on, right?
No,
I thought you did, because I thought you'd posted one once. Since she's blonde, you'd posted once in the Discord. This is like Carvoxia without her helmet on.
I might have. I don't recall doing. It's not real if I don't remember it.
Ben. The problem would have been if Catraxia would have actually became visible, but the rest of us could have seen her. Then I can guarantee there would have been at least one other character that would have had more complications. It's like, wait a sec, Mordecai, are you interested in sharing your demon hobby?
Which is why I think it would have been perfect for just Ben to be able to see her, because by that point, Ben is probably the only one who is completely immune to her form of persuasion.
You think that Lillian wouldn't have just turned into a giant panther and tried to maul her on sight? That's funny.
Meanwhile,
we have
either
two different
Proxy
teams
or
here.
Beth Maya, either one would have been going like, "Hello, yes, please."
Yeah, no, there's two teams here, and regardless of my team, Lillian's team is Team Destroy Catraxia.
That is fair. I suppose that is also a slight distinction, which is Ben was at the point where he would be like, you're useful enough to not try something stupid and kill you, but I am going to be I'm going shit talk you constantly.
We're gonna have cat fights all day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. So I suppose out of our NPCs that were principal and were that were present all the time, we had Captain Corvoxia, who had been with you from the beginning, right? We had the teenagers, your mission objectives, Saifashai Al-Hadun and Shogun Sonzaku, right? And then we had your various squaddies and Catraxia. And I think that's really it as far as long-term NPCs. So
You did like part of the pitch I recall was like it's a constrained cast of characters because you are moving on the road,
right.
and so it's kind of just you guys and like yeah, there aren't going to be many additions to the cast once it's set up.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense to constantly be weaving in new characters over and over again. So especially since I was trying to like have impactful losses, right? It's like if you guys kind of brought somebody into a fight and then they died, you'd spent 10 sessions getting to know them. It would have been way more impactful instead of just like, oh, this is local NPC. We're weaving him in for the next 3 sessions. If he dies, he dies. Who cares, right? So, Any other remarks about the NPCs or questions about them or particular favorites?
I gotta say, I just want to say real quick. I know everybody, including myself, is on Team Mommy Catraxia. Like we understand, we get it, we understand. That's like obvious. Okay?
We'll just put her on the shelf, and we know where she is, and we know what people think of her. Okay.
Like hard eyes, we understand. I think that there's not enough of that energy for Captain Corvaxia.
I just did a whole extended bit. What are you talking about?
I'm just saying more of that energy. Hope that lady's retirement is just wonderful. Dating sim when. So that's anyway, just need to put that in there.
Valgas dating
the record.
sim.
Yeah, why not?
My NPC vote is going to be none of the above, but they did not get at least one of them as much canvas camera time to have made CJ's list there. But given that Mythlia borrowed one of the NPCs for part of her backstory, it's hard for me not to throw my vote at Morris. What's his name? Morris Dalebert and their friendly dark elf friend Lyria, or whatever her name is.
I don't think you know what the word friendly means. You use that a lot to describe people of dubious origin or definitely hostile intentions.
Well, I mean, she didn't seem completely hostile. Although then she never replied when we tried sending to either her or Morris. So maybe they didn't like us that much. But we know Morris was not a big fan of Proxia by the time that he dropped off the canvas.
You also used the term to describe the Pry leaders that literally murdered you. So, that's what I'm saying. But yeah, no, I hear what you're putting down. You wanted Morris / Luther to have more screen time, but whose fault is that?
I would have actually. Mythlia would have enjoyed him to have more screen time.
Yeah.
Proxia would have probably enjoyed. Would have wanted Lyria to have more screen time.
Okay. So we have Apostate standing with the big ladies. The 2 big ladies, right? Ben, definitely who? What do we think?
I wanted my enemy. Like, have you ever okay, this is a real deep cut. Have you ever watched The Nanny?
I can't with you.
I'm familiar, yes.
Niles and Cece is what I wanted.
Okay, moving on. D, I know you had like that romantic sort of interest in Corvaxia. Any other notable NPCs you had thoughts about?
The thing is, we came in at a point where there was like those were really some of the big players on the screen. I think the teenagers, I wish we had like not even seen more of them. I think again it's just the moment in time that we came in where like a lot of it was very much so like escort mission.
Yeah.
But I hope they do all right. I hope they get out on the other side okay.
I mean, I suppose that's the other thing is we were all so scared of we're just like if we don't, nothing can happen to them. So we don't want them in fights. We don't want them along for missions. They've just got to be safe.
Yeah.
The typical Ben thing.
But keep them alive. But that was the mission, right? So, you know, risk reward, right? You didn't risk them. And so there was not as much story-related reward involving them. You know, you had your conversations in the non-optional places for them, as well as camps, and that was pretty much it. You know? So, and more, Sarah, I know Catraxia, you're contractually obligated to say, but anyone you want to take a second swing for? I know you mentioned before, Corvoxia definitely saved your life more than once. So,
Corvoxia for sure. I mean, yeah, no, she saved our lives. She kind of reeled our asses in and made sure to like keep us moving in the right direction. She didn't kill me when I had cleared demonic influence, so like, you know, thanks for that.
props.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know,
for you.
But also massive badass. So like, yeah, she cool.
She cool. Okay.
She cool.
Alrighty. I think that's all 5 of you. So let's kind of move on to the question and answer portion of the exam. For me, what do you guys want to know that I can answer?
Could we have killed that tiefling earlier? Where was he? What did he do? I want answers.
Okay, so he has a name, and I'm not sure if I still have. I might have to pull it out of the archive because he was in a few scenes in the very beginning, and then he was kind of just like a background actor that had shown up and would occasionally be in camp scenes. And that was pretty much it. Let me see if I can pull his ass out of here.
Well, did he exist from the beginning as like this is an enemy plant? Was that the intention from like the get-go?
Okay, so his name was Sekutai, right? And early on, if you recall and had been paying attention to Cyphershot, she said she remember him from the prison. And that was your big red flag. Because she remembers everyone from the prison. She's the oldest and she was there, right? She's the oldest survivor and she was there. So she, of course, remembers everyone from... How could she not? But she didn't remember Sekutai. So, that was your big red flag. He had been there from the beginning of the campaign, but he was an enemy plant. So they make a tiefling after the raid happens. They make a Inferni is the proper term. Make an Inferni after the raid happens, and because the prison of Al-Hadun did not end with a victory, the lab hadn't been destroyed, and Marusaraf was still alive, right? You know, you guys fell for the same trap that party did as well. We'll get to that. But, you know, because of that, Sekutai was allowed to be a thing. And so he had infiltrated Corinthian military by showing up, you know, as an Inferni. He got lost in the sauce. They thought they had, you know, a regular Inferni on their hands. He was competent. He was smart. He got picked to be a secretary for Commander Morenes in Delta. Commander Morenes and him got separated in Delta. As far as she knew, originally, just from the chaos. He left purposefully to follow you guys because Saifashai and Sonzaku were his targets originally. But you guys had them so in pocket the entire time, he couldn't get off an assassination, either of them. And he had been angling for a while. So some of my secret roles were about that, right? This man's dead, so I can talk about him all I want. Before you joined D and you joined Apostate, there was an opportunity quite often to figure out who he was and to do something about him. But that last opportunity was right before that battle, before they went into the mountains. And that's when he slipped away. He didn't want to be trapped underground with you all. He wanted to be able to continue to, do his spy thing. He had a sending stone, and the other person that had the other stone was Ekergad the Impaler himself. So if you had searched his tent, you would have found that. If you'd searched his person, you might have found that, really depending on what time of day it was or when it happened. He only had 8 hit points. You could have just blasted him and he would have died, right? So, you had many opportunities. You just missed the red flag to say, hey, this guy's not who he says he is. But
Although if we'd have found the sending stone, would we have had like the whole Thoruman-like thing or Denethor-like thing? It's like, oh, okay, now you've followed into this way of Ekercat because you've been staring at the sending stone.
no. They don't work that way, so. But no, they have to be triggered on purpose. And if you don't know who you're talking to when you send the message, right? So you could have sent a message to whoever had the other stone. And if you were talking to Ekergad the Impaler or someone else, you wouldn't have known that unless they replied. So, that's kind of like an interesting, like, from fiction example of what they do, but it's not a Palantir. So, but yeah, he had his little walkie-talkie. So yeah, you guys could have been like, hey, if you had thought about it, you would have been like, oh, this is probably something that connects to Commander Morenes, and if you had, fit the role, that would have been the logic to follow who he could have the ascending stone that matches to. It would have been Commander Morenes, right? He was just a shady kid, and you murdered a shady kid. Now you have a ascending stone, and you might want to apologize to his boss. That's kind of how it would have played out if you guys didn't succeed the associated roles for it. In which case, you'd have been telling Ekergad the Impaler's messages you intended for Commander Morenes. So, a little bit of deviousness baked into the deviousness. Yeah, that was a good question, D. That was you who asked that, right?
Yes.
I forget these things sometimes. Once I start rambling, I lose track of it. But that was a good question. Next question. Don't all jump at once.
Would it have actually been possible when Mythlia was looking in Elcorth to try to find Morris? If she had rolled better, could she have actually found him, or was the person that didn't seem like him but kind of looked familiar, was that actually him? But not wanting to say, I don't want you to know I'm here.
So, asking this question sort of seems...
Which I know you may not be able to answer. I get that. But...
So, originally, the character that you had a backstory relationship was the one that, Praxia pissed off enough to leave, right? And then all sending messages failed, right?
Yep.
At that point, we don't know what came of that particular character, right? So,
Right.
you know, part of it was you're making an investigation to find a character who may not be even on this plane of existence. I still have to let
Right.
you roll because, you know, it is something that you could possibly know that you need to have a answer on, but the DC could be so high because of the circumstances that it's impossible to succeed. That's A,
Yeah,
right?
and that's kind of what I figured was the case. Was that there's no way I'm probably going to be able to succeed at this role.
The other side of it, B, is, you know, what happened is what happened. You know, and it's not like this character is dead and I can divulge all their secrets, right? For you guys as players. So, unfortunately, this is not a question I can answer. Sorry.
I kind of expected, but if I didn't ask, but
Next question.
I've got one.
Go ahead.
So I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but did you have Catraxia already like thought up and created from beforehand, or did you create her specifically for this?
That's a really good question. So, when it comes to world building, there's the how to put this. There's the paralyzing overdoing it method, and then there's the islands in the sea method, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what that describes is I have to have the economics of this city squared away before I can even consider like the local economics of the area surrounding it, and then we can then begin to talk about what the religious, etc. ad nauseum. For miles and miles and miles. That's the paralyzing, I'm doing too much world building, right? The archipelago, or the islands in the sea, is... Alright, I have a campaign taking place in this particular area. This is the only area I really need to know about. For now, I'm going to build out all the stuff that I need out here. And how it connects to the larger place. Just in a broad strokes kind of way. So Sorath is a great example. Delta is a great example. Let's talk about Delta. This will lead me into answering your question. So Delta gets founded a few years before this mess starts. It doesn't have a wall. You know, it's got buildings, permanent structures and such, but it was basically like a small port in the swamps before it became a city. Became a city because of this influx of refugees from the south, as well as like the military necessity of we have all these fucking people here, we don't know what to do with them, we gotta protect them because that's our mandate, but also, you know, there's a problem heading this way and it's real mad, right? So Delta gets founded. Lore about Delta is sparse, and it always has been. Because it's not a very interesting place as far as the story is concerned. It's also the place where our story begins, but it does not stay there very long. I didn't write much about it. We move along to a lot of the different places here. That little villages that you came across in that one battlefield have no names whatsoever. The swamp has a name. The river has a name, but that's because they're much bigger, right? You know, you come across the Kravaxia Duchy, not a whole lot about it because it gets destroyed, right? We have Captain Kravaxia, this is her home, she brings us the context, so what we know about it is what she knows about it. This leads me into the islands. The little islands of lore that we have along the way in this campaign are all connected to either a character or a specific location where stuff happens. Catraxia was made in connection to your character's backstory, but the groundwork for her was already developed in the backgrounds of the Dark Gods. So I had to pick somebody who made sense to do the things that I wanted them to do, right? and then develop a character that fit that section of the Dark Gods, right? So that's how Catraxia happened. She got developed here for this campaign. Now, since this campaign's happened, she's kind of branched off, and she's having a lot more influence as a character, and that just kind of is, you know, you make a character, the character takes on a life of their own, right? And then has their own impact. So, and that's good, right? But it's the island chain, it's the archipelago way of world building. You know, there would have been no need to make a character like Catraxia if you didn't have, you know, that particular need character's backstory, and all you thought you were getting a book, right? So there's that layer to it that you didn't know about beforehand, right? And this is how a lot of the stuff kind of ripples out. Traxia's involvement with Mordecai and enabling him in the open and also assisting you guys in the open caused problems between the various groups of demons, various hells, which, you know, caused Nehemoth to compel Ahiel to get her shit together and get onto the company line, which caused Door Eternity to have some rather nasty demons show up in a recent session. So, you know, these things kind of affect each other. But none of that would have happened if Mordecai didn't have a need for a weird and strange book that required a personality to fit it.
Demon Mommy.
Demon Mommy. Good question, though.
Nice. And that leads me to a follow-up. And I'm suspecting I probably won't be able to get an answer to this, but I want to ask it anyway. What are the chances we'll encounter her again?
I can't answer that.
I knew it. Okay, fair enough. I figured I'd ask.
Okay, next question.
I guess a question for you, Darrow, is I know you are in Bib. Are you planning on bringing Mordecai back out for that with the way his story ended? Are you not? Like, I'm just curious to know if you're planning on continuing with that.
That's a funny question, only because I'm bringing my other Gloomstalker Ranger.
You are truly yourself and nothing else, huh?
I really am. I don't ever normally even play Gloomstalker Rangers, but for some reason, something has compelled me to make 2 Gloomstalker Rangers in a row, and so
Well,
now...
you didn't, because Mordecai's a Drake Warden.
Right. I don't know
That's
what the
right. Why did I think...
What are you fucking talking about, Darrow? You fool.
Yeah,
Her
brain.
name is Catraxia that has compelled you.
My brain.
Reynolds isn't going to be a Gloomstalker in the next campaign, though. He's going to be something else.
That is true.
He's hitting the reset button. He's refunding all of his points. He doesn't get any of that XP back. There is no buyback plan. There is no refund plan. He's just starting at 0.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
That's because he's got his leg cut off, though. You know, he's got to learn.
Honestly,
Go ahead. He's got to learn to walk again. You know, so doesn't have
you
time.
can't really sleep with a big metal leg, so...
Yeah, you know, it's kind of a well, we got to start from 0 here because this kid can't walk.
He's a cripple now. But that actually brings me to an interesting question. I know Ben said that, or Lee, you said that you might want Ben to be a potentially, maybe even a character for Azu, to just bring back in the narrative. And that's actually something I've messaged him about too for Mordecai, because if certain things had happened differently, he would have been trying to escape from the party, and if he had succeeded, obviously he's out of the campaign, but you know, that could be interesting. And not necessarily as a good character, not as a bad character. I have no idea. It's up to Azu.
Yeah.
But that was a thought I had too, actually. So.
Well, because the 2 ways I was thinking of taking Ben for that would be, if he's coming back, if we're playing him again, he's a lower level, this will be basically like, okay, something happens with the way, like, he either like self-imposed or not, he is forced to relearn druidic magic in a different way. Or like or take it like make him like a wizard or something. Be like, okay, I'm at the academy now. I can't rely on any of my other skills. I have to learn it this way. Or like the Farlotas put some kind of sanction on him. But I think the other way to take it, is to make him basically not reliant on being a specific level, and that means becoming an NPC.
Any other questions?
I will ask the question I'm surprised no one has asked you yet.
Sure.
Now that battle is done with, and at least we know that there were some things saved, but our audience doesn't. So, what was salvageable from the lab, and B, did the army come through in time for at least Corvoxia, or assumingly they didn't for Mathia, but we have some aftermath to ask about.
So the results of the fight are pretty bad. Not gonna lie, Kovaresh is a trap, and he always is. He's more dangerous on not his turn. And the more you engage him on not his turn, it's your turn, the worse it gets. He would have been limited to just like his regular damage output for his turn and legendary actions if you guys were like one-on-oneing him. Like, let's say Eliana was just like one-on-oneing him and somebody else was keeping her alive occasionally, you guys would have been able to do a lot more. Part of the issue in that battle, I'm going to talk about that battle now, was there was a perfectly good choke point that you could have reached had you not stopped to kind of like take in the lab and start grabbing stuff. And if you had reached that choke point and held it, you would have saved all of the daglings and all of the research. So, tactical mistake there, made out of a good logical decision to save the research that you could, right? Which was good, which prevented it from being a total loss. 3 eggs survived out of 10. The explosion in there, plus, the egg that was smashed by the Pryleader, it kind of just gets bad numbers from there. I was rolling their saves after the session, I think the next day or two, and only 3 of them survived. So one of those eggs is going to be the character in Baptized in Blood. A super fun character, I think. It'll be a good time to play with him and watch his antics and such. I'm super hyped about that. But Kovaresh, and I'm freely talking about this for a reason, Kovaresh is always a trap. He's scary, he hits hard. The more you fight him, the worse it gets, which kind of continues psychologically manipulating you into believing you need to fight him harder now, faster, so that he can die faster and stop hurting you. The general right tactical move is to not engage, or to hold him in a spot, kill his cronies, or meet your objective, like destroy whatever it is that he's protecting, right? And force him to retreat, or, kind of just like prevent him from doing his thing, right? Because he's gonna run you over like a tank if you fight him. He's just gonna be rolling attacks all the time at advantage, chewing you apart, tearing you guys up. Without the bonuses and without your potions, you guys would have TPK'd. Mathematically, it would not have worked out. You guys would have TPK'd.
We
So-
needed to do like what we'd done outside of Hellcorth, where he tactically retreated.
Yes, you'd have to like make his mission objective impossible. So he will retreat. So that's one angle, right? The other thing is when it comes to the other side of the question is when it comes to like when the army arrived. Hellcorth's a big town. It's not small by any means. I was rolling after the fact. Mythlia was already dead, and so was Korvaxia. Ben had a spell slot left to save Korvaxia from having a problem with like shades and such in the spectral realm by casting Gentle Repose on her. No such spell was cast on Mythlia, however, and a lot of that I think had to do with, Ben's character. Ben knew Korvaxia better. Ben's instinct was to go to her first. I think that was more of a character
and then,
decision.
yeah, and then the saving throw for the soup for the potion went completely bad.
Yeah, unfortunately. As a DM, part of me was like, I don't need to make a saving throw for this. You got mangled. But on the other hand, it seemed like, a good thing to try. I didn't want to get your hopes up about it, so I think I couched it pretty well. But at the same time, there was a chance that it could have survived because there's a lot of like leeway given in these games, right? Where like you get knocked down by, you get run over by an elephant, but all your crap's fine, which is not realistic at all, right? Your shit would be broken if something knocked you down like that. Like your armor would have holes in it if you've been fighting for a while. You'd have taken damage. You would have needed like to get repairs done. Your potions probably would have been smashed, right? And this would have been a constant thing. But that wasn't necessarily the game we were playing. Because we didn't use those rules from the beginning. We hadn't talked about it being that hardcore. However, from a narrative standpoint, it made sense to try to preserve the potion, but at the same time, the potion was bought for you guys as individuals by someone who bought the subscriptions for us. So it was not necessarily something you were owed. As a group, it was something that was meant to be used by you, the player. So I decided to let luck decide whether or not that intention would be spread to others at the time. So part of it was my call, part of it was not my call because I knew it wasn't something I had given you, it was something someone else had given you. And the third part of it was, when you get mangled by 3 Prilators, it doesn't seem realistic for all of your shit to be intact, especially when you've been down for a few rounds, right? On the other hand, we are playing a game, and we haven't been using those rules from the beginning, so, there's a lot of push and pull with the drama of the narrative at the time. Either way, I made the decision to let you have a saving throw for it. It didn't work out. That said, Mythlia was unprotected, but because there was no spell to give her Gentle Repose. That spell wouldn't have been there even without the potions, right? Because Ben would have burned out of spells by the time the battle was over without those potions. And like I said before, it would have been a TPK without all of the bonuses and such because you guys had fallen into the Kovaresh trap. So, Mythlia dies, and she's in a city. According to the lore, as we've talked about, the spectral realm is haunted and occupied by shades and such that devour the souls of the living, right? Or, the dead in this case. Any soul or person or being that comes into their realm is food for them. And so they tend to congregate where tends to be abundant. So Hellcorth, being a big city, will have a higher average number of deaths per capita on a regular time frame. And on top of it, it is a city at war. So it's a feeding frenzy for shades. dying in Hellcorth is one of the worst things that can happen to you as a soul. So unfortunately, she would have been ripped to shreds, and the same fate would have befallen Ravaxia as soon as she died, had it not been for Gentle Repose. I think the battle was maybe 10 to 15 rounds. That's about a minute and change, minute and a half or so. Not terribly long to be left alone in a space where you're dead. There are a few other dead people there too, so there's probably a bit of a little bit of organizing happening and trying to figure out what happened to you guys and what to do next, and some significant dread of these creatures are going to be coming after us any second now. And then for a period of time that is unknown to you, things continue, and then Ravaxia, if she was there, if there was a conversation between her and Mythlia, she would have been yoinked back into her body for at least temporary holding as Gentle Repose. Then on top of that, whether or not the military arrived in time or not, those souls that hadn't been protected in that fashion ripped to shreds, as eventually those shades would have found you. So, bad ending for Mythlia and everyone else who would have died in that space, right? It was by no means a easy or good encounter. It was definitely hard. It was definitely super optional, in the sense that difficulty was extremely high. As far as whether or not Ravaxia survived, she did. The army did make it in time. They had enough time to, gather her, take her somewhere where she could be resurrected. But whether or not she was resurrected and fully intact or not is, not part of this story. So, it was a good question, though, and it was something that needed to be asked. I appreciate it.
Well, I suppose, properly killing... It was not part of the actual mission objectives, but I do recall the last time Kovaresh got put down, it really did fuck him up for a while. So I am curious. I want to hear the absolute verbal thrashing he's getting in the hells right now.
That brings me to the other thing. He's not getting one because he's dead.
Oh, for real?
Like, for real? For real?
Yeah, for real. He's...
Hell yeah!
He's Kaputski. You've finished him. This was something that was a possibility, and it was only a possibility. And there was a slim chance of it, right? Because it required one particular weapon to make the final blow on him, and that was the hammer.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I didn't... Oh my god. Okay, cool.
Some items have a hidden trait called Rest in Peace on them.
Oh, like all the that's the fucking spears. Oh my god, you're right.
And that was a nat 20. That last hit was a nat 20. Oh my god. Holy shit.
So some weapons have a hidden trait on them, Rest in Peace, and that can permanently kill something, right? Because it's basically like blessed by death. If you kill something with that weapon, it's done. It's dead forever. There's no coming back from that. So he's dead forever. There's no coming back from that.
That's good, right?
Like, okay, I'm gonna be so real. I'm sad that the Daglings, it's gonna take a long time for us to recreate the Daglings' genetic makeup and all the experiments and all that shit. Permanently dead Kovaresh, I think, is kind of worth it.
Agreed.
I don't know. It sounds like we unlocked enough Dagling for the person who really, really, really wanted to play a Dagling to be able to. So that comboed with kill Cobra Rush for real. No take backsies. I'll fucking take the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Lee, now how many times has that been now that one of your characters has been involved in a fight with Cobra Rush?
Like 4 times.
4?
It's been at least 3 or 4 in this campaign.
Yeah, and then because then there was I think there was 2 others. One where he died, and then but he came back.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's also this too, because it kind of I had that feature, the Mark of Tall, on him, which he picked up after he got his ass handed to him in the prior campaign in Prison of Al Hadun. I think was the last time we saw him before in the Heart of Rage, because he wasn't in. He's not in Blaze of Cruelty. So, the Mark of Tall works very specifically. It's basically a resurrection mechanic built in. That's what the brand thing was doing. So when you hit him and the brand lit up, and then I rolled, and he didn't make the roll. I think he rolled a 2, and he needed a 4, 5, or 6.
yeah, 50-50.
Yeah. So he failed the 50-50. That was it. But if he succeeded, he would have gotten back up.
Yeah.
And that would have...
Oh my god.
the fight would have continued.
Too bad he didn't fail at the Kravaxia Duchy.
It wouldn't have worked at the Kravaxia Duchy.
Oh, because her spear it's not goated with the sauce like that.
It doesn't have rest in peace on it. It's strong,
Right,
but it's not. It's not, as you said, goated with the sauce like that.
Right. But I mean, his Mark of Tall thing, he could have failed the roll, right?
He could have failed the roll there to come back, but thing is, all he would have to do is just walk out of another portal again, because he instantly remanifests on the other side. There's a logistical problem that the prologues had for them, which was the closest portal was way back a ways, and while he can fly, it's not very fast. So when he would die before, he would be back in Vextarak, put together more demons for a legion, do all that whole logistical crap, and come out of the portal with more army, lead them to the front line, do his thing, or do whatever other missions he was doing in the background, right? And then eventually catch up with some player characters who either kicked his ass again or bravely ran away from him again, So the logistics.
I am elated, actually.
Two things off of that. One is I fucking knew something was up because you maybe 1 or 2 rounds into taking swings at people, CJ, you made the comment of oh, I'm surprised you're not using Shale Sunder.
I said, what are you, allergic to Shale Sunder?
Yeah, and I was like, my fucking Spidey, I was like, there's some shit with this. I looked at the card literally for the entirety of the next round, trying to put it together, and I was like, I don't understand what the tactical advantage of this is comparatively to
higher average damage output.
Master, huh?
Higher average damage output.
I know, but I get to re-roll 1s and 2s.
It's a great weapon. It's a maul.
Yeah, well, I only get to re-roll 1s and 2s on because it's the fucking. I was trying to figure it out the whole time. I couldn't do the math on the fly. I kept getting the math wrong, and I was like, "Fuck it. I'm just gonna roll. I'm just gonna do it."
You're just gonna take it on faith and just weep all.
I was like, I know that this has been mentioned for a reason, and I'm just gonna take it to the bank. And I guess the question off of that is because we found that hammer up in the caldera, nothing around it, kind of just abandoned. Where the fuck did that come from?
No, there was a dead body there.
Yeah, there was a dead body next to it.
Who was that?
So you had your little story of that guy who that old hero who had gone through the mountain and saw the you know, the doors and across that chasm, right? And he had died there. The hammer that he had went with him. Like, so, you die, right? Your spirit lingers in this world. His body wasn't there. His body wandered out, and then he collapsed when the environment was too nasty, right? So he fully separated flesh from spirit, and his body kept wandered off. That was his hammer you picked up.
Then the sword, magma cutter, is it equally special?
Negative. That's what it says on it on the tin.
Okay, yeah, and it's like it seems like but it was an odd weapon to find there because like okay, at least it's like does fire damage, and demons plus fire is not so useful.
Some things are just there, you know? It's not... Part of a living world is that you guys run into stuff that's just there, as opposed to stuff that's placed there for your campaign, right? So
magma cutter was there from someone else that had been there before, even though it was like in a statue or something.
yeah, Magma Cutter was just there. So was the hammer. You guys have... And they're... You know, going into the temple and even picking up the hammer, all that shit was optional. You didn't have to do any of that, right? There were options all over the place of doing stuff differently. You could have had a big knockout, drag-out fight the mountain pass to the south. You could have gone that direction. Would have been nasty. You might have lost at that point. But you could have taken that path. Or you could have fucked straight off and gone to the north and gone to Rosterford instead, or tried to go around the mountains instead. There were a lot of options, right? So don't take it that, like, you guys were supposed to go through the caldera. I had planned for you to go through the caldera. It was the most interesting path, right? Because the temple was there and, you know, all that other stuff. And it brought you, you know, to the hammer, which was the one weapon that was located in the campaign's area of, you know, story that could do something about Kovaresh, right? Had you not taken that path, and had you not picked up that hammer, or had she not used it, or had she not been the one to get the killing blow on him, very different results, you know. For starters, like, let's say Eliana didn't hit him. She missed instead, and someone else killed him instead. Even if he didn't roll that, and if he had rolled that too, well, Zolf, he's still alive, and I'd be dreaming up the next day to use him, right? So, you know, things shake out the way they shake out, but some stuff is just there, and some stuff you find is just there is really helpful for you. So that hammer was there because it belonged to that hero. Right, Magma Cutter was in that caldera for a different reason. I don't think you guys engaged with all of the stuff in there in depth because, you know, a lot of harsh environmental factors going on in there. So
I do have to ask, and you probably will not answer, but I will ask anyway.
Mhm.
The chest that originally got Mythlaya in trouble because she got the attention of the fire elemental that was in the caldera.
Mhm.
Was that any hints as to what was actually in that chest?
Oh no hints. Nope.
That's what I figured. But...
It's not your stuff. It's not your stuff. That stuff is lost forever now.
It wouldn't have been in character if I hadn't have asked.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not... asking's fine. Yeah, the answer to the question is it's not your stuff, so you don't get to know. So... For all you know, it could have just been, I don't know, ant eggs or dust.
For all Mythlion knows, it could have been a mimic.
Could have been a mimic. Might have been a magma mimic. I don't know.
That's for somebody else to go back to the caldera and find out.
Any other questions?
I'm just like, fuck yeah, that motherfucker's dead. Yes.
Yeah. That makes Mythlia dying while helping her allies there and making sure that Eliana had the extra armor buff and etc. That makes all that more worth it. That's like okay that was able to enable killing this recurring villain that's you've been playing with for ages now. It's like they're finally gone.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody even worse will take his place.
Well, like to CJ's credit, killing Kovaresh has caused the demon army to suffer like tactical fucky-walkies. Just by the fact that like he wasn't ready for the invasion, and so that's why the leadership was swapped. The fact that is a general. Eliana killed a general.
I know. I guess the real question for you, CJ, is now that she's actually really for real killed Kobaresh, does she have to take the fucking captain exam?
Oh yeah, because that's what's important to Eliana right now. Yeah. Do I have to take this test because like I killed that guy? No, I don't think so. So typically the exam would be about, you know, not balking in the face of mortal danger and being able to lead from the front, right? That's kind of what it's about. So, you know, that kind of trust is placed in you when you can do those things and your loyalty is unquestionable. I don't think the crown would bat an eye about that. I think you would just get the ceremony back at the capital in the castle, and you would receive your right of Imperium at that point. So, you know, there'd be a lot of, well, who's this girl, and why is she skipping the exam? Excuse me, she's the one who just killed Kovaresh like last Tuesday, so you can shut your fucking mouth, Tommy. You know? So that's, I think that would be apt to say that Eliana doesn't have to take the exam. It's probably the first captain in military history that was like not promoted because of her nobility, but because of her acumen, to not have to actually take the exam.
That's so fucking funny.
Would she feel like she needs to take it now?
Yeah, like, is it gonna be like, well, did I luck out? Oh, I love that for her. That's so good.
Anxiety. Am I really worth it?
And once again, as in game, so as in life, girl bossing too close to the sun.
Yeah. That was a good question, though. Anything else?
Lore-related question that hopefully will get answered.
You tend to ask a lot of questions that I can't answer, and I feel bad about it. So
that's okay. Well, this one hopefully is an answerable one, because we've seen what's happened before when like humans and things like that die, like their experience in the spectral realm and getting devoured, etc. Now, this is the first that we've actually had on camera of an Inferni dying.
Yep.
Is their experience exactly the same as it is for like humans, or are there differences?
No, it's the same. They're human in all ways that matter.
Human in soul. I was gonna say, is it just go straight to Nahemeth belly? Don't pass go.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure. I was wondering, do they even do the Inferni still have a soul after what's done to them? It's like, are they like, or is there like part of them that's so demonic that something else happens to them? It's like, okay, I have to know.
Well, so her experience is as I described, right? She
Yeah.
perishes, she goes to the spectral realm, right? It means she's not a demon because she would go straight to the hell that she belongs to. So there's that. Then she is thus devoured by shades, as we discussed, which is a typical end result for a human soul, or any soul that passes into the spectral realm. So we can infer from both of those experiences, right, that what would follow would be the same that would follow for a human because she is already followed all of those steps. So it's no stretch of the imagination for me to say yes in italics with a little asterisk next to it that she has the same experience as a human, right? Standard DM disclaimers apply, but
Yeah.
because there was always the disclaimer that you guys didn't know about to start with. But yeah, standard disclaimers apply. Her experience is the same as a human, as far as we all know.
And then, do we know where Proxia ended up at? Given once she turned into a demon and she got killed, and so she kind of wandered back to assumedly one of the hells. It's like, did she end up in Vextrac or?
That fate is not so set in stone that you guys would be aware of. Not something that you would. Yeah, I can't say anything about that. So.
New demon, new hell?
Mm.
So,
May happen.
is it something? Will we like ever run into her again? Like, okay, here now, this demon looks familiar.
I can't tell you that either. I know you know I know you know I can't
No,
answer
you
that
can't answer
question.
that one.
Don't know why you're bothering.
I was like, I know you're not gonna answer that one.
I can't answer that one. So,
But once again, it's like, I have to ask this question.
Lee, you said you new demon, new hell. You have to know. Is that what you said?
Yes, new demon. Well, I was gonna say, like, new demon, new form of demon that hasn't existed before. There should be a new hell.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, DJ, upend your entire cosmology. Come on.
I'll get right on that.
But that would mean she'd end up becoming like the new dark god or something of that hell, then, right? Because otherwise, where would they get a god for it?
You know, I know the whole new demon, new hell is funny, but like, it is predicated on me not knowing what I'm doing a little bit, which I find after this entire conversation very funny. But yeah, no, I'm just keeping the secret close to the chest. I know what's happened to her.
The hell? A hell isn't a title. It isn't a seat of power. It's a cage that the earthen gods put people in.
Yeah, there's a box.
Maybe this is the first time Hadasul's acting in millennia and is like, oh wow, new demon. Let me move some stuff around and open up this new box. Put you in there.
Right? Or perhaps it's just like, well, you're probably not a problem, or, how involved in this do I want to be, Because how involved have they been lately? Not very. So, you make a fine counterpoint to the idea, of my resistance of upending my entire cosmology. None of which has actually upended my cosmology. Just telling you that right now. Her becoming a demon and then dying out and then, supposedly being unaffiliated, right? None of that has upended my cosmology. There's a way that she fits into this, just not disclosing it. I'll put it that way.
Indubitably.
Indubitably. Okay, we still have about 15 minutes. The gear.
Well, I suppose there is the question on everyone's mind. How many years of imprisonment does it take for Mordecai to realize he was proposed to?
Oh, by Ben, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain had to catch up with that right there. Yeah, Darrow. How many years of imprisonment does it take for you to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
So, it'd probably be like one of those things where, like, you know, you talk to this girl in high school and you had no idea she was into you, and then like 10 years later, oh my god, I'm a fucking idiot. It's gonna be something along those lines. So like a decade, maybe less.
For a proposal? For a proposal?
I have a follow-up question actually for
Hit me.
for Darrow.
Hmm.
First of all, how dare you?
When did this proposal happen? I didn't know. This is the first I've heard of this.
The
Alethana
Oath
fits into this
strings.
box just as Mordecai does.
Mhm.
What?
The oath bowstrings are an elven custom. You are making a promise, and the promise is usually associated with a commitment. Of course, Ben was never going to say that, but that was what the promise was.
He gave
so
you
based on
a
that-
knife carved with a ritual and a promise, and you ignored him.
So based on that, how does Ben feel that he has been tossed aside for Catraxia?
Well, that's why I wanted to be able to see Catraxia, because he could have been he would have been so bitter about it and so rude to Catraxia. I think he could have hurt her feelings. Actually, it would have been his life's mission to find where her feelings are and hurt them.
Lee, I think that's the hubris. I don't know that you could have.
No, I think I could have. Listen, Ben went in this is good ending Ben. This is not the Ben that was like, okay, something has happened and I am going to spend my life figuring out what hurts demons. Not what kills them, what hurts them.
We're here for one thing only, and that's to cause pain.
Yeah, I mean, you told us on the side, or you at least told me on the side, Lee, that like if Dennis had given Ben a harder time, you were gonna take Mordecai and run.
Yes, that was the other thing, was like, if it had come down to Mordecai fleeing, very good chance Ben would have helped.
Oh.
That would have been so cute.
Speaking of cute,
So,
oh, go ahead.
so then we need to jump to the scene where Ben stops by the place where Mordecai's imprisoned, and after Mordecai has understood what's happened, what was going on, like wrote Ben a heartfelt letter and etc.
Well, that's all post-campaign stuff. We'd have to
And
find.
Go ahead.
We'd have to find that out organically through like the lore channel, right? You know, there's only so much post-campaign stuff I'm willing to like game out in conversation. Some stuff I just need to work out with you guys individually at some point, and either post to the lore channel or not, depending on when it's pertinent. So, but yeah, you know, it's something to think about from a shipping standpoint, right? So, you know. I was gonna say, speaking of things that are cute, what did we think of Cypher Shy and Sonzaku?
I am just so sad that Ben failed the insight checks necessary to like properly notice it was happening, because he's supposed to be a perceptive character like that, and I was like, God damn it! I would have been so more involved in that if Ben figured out it was going on.
I did just sort of want to take him by the shoulders and be like, "Oh, honey, like she's you are teenagers, my guy, my dude. But it very, very sweet, I think, in sentiment, especially considering what they have going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I
what
mean-
one of them's gone, and what one of them's gone through. I mean, one of them has gone through this hell and is the prison of Alcatoon, and the others went through this hell of their people has been upended and completely transported, and now where they settled has been completely destroyed. And so, if nothing else, they're trauma bonding.
Yeah, you were going to
Which
say
all-
something. Oh, go ahead,
Huh?
Dee.
Oh,
Go ahead, Dee.
No, I was gonna say, like, which all healthy relationships are super, super set up on.
Dara, what were you going to say?
I mean, I think that in all honesty, like Mordecai would probably accept, and he would be like eventually, like once he fucking realizes it, the dense motherfucker, he would understand and he would accept. But he's also like, it's gonna be a bit before he realizes it, and in the moment, I also didn't know how to handle it, so that was kind of my own like, how do I do this?
Yeah,
Right.
I basically got that and was like, okay, I think I've said enough here, despite not saying any of the actual words.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And then once he figures it out, what's Catraxia got to say about it?
I mean, I don't know if Catraxia actually cares. She's probably not like the committed, monogamous kind. You know what I mean? Like-
Although
Not only
all
does
of their-
she. Go ahead,
although
sorry.
there is, you are supposed to eventually convince someone to join her team.
That is also a thing, and
so,
he has
like,
not done that yet.
it's like, okay, you can have Ben as long as I can have, as long as we share him.
I think that Catraxia strikes me as the type of personality who not already clocked that day one, but has decided it is funnier not to tell Mordecai anything.
You got her.
Yeah.
She's definitely, but it's funnier this way. That's definitely her vibe. But this is funnier, so we're gonna do it this way. You know?
Well, she is a heel demon, so hilarity is the thing.
Let's see. I know there were a bunch of community questions, but we've kind of covered a lot of them. Just in our general conversation. There's, if your characters had best friends or crushes. We didn't really have side quests in this. I don't think we can say there was a side quest to be seen on the horizon. So we really only had the one quest.
Well, we'll save the Daglig with their side quest, right?
No, that was
Or
optional.
Side quest.
That's a post campaign optional thing. It's not. It's like the Halloween candy left over that you get to enjoy, right? After giving it out all night. That's what that was. It was not guaranteed. You couldn't have pursued it during the moment, so it's not really a side quest, in my opinion.
Makes sense.
Let's see. We've talked a lot about the characters and what was, behind them, and what some of us didn't get to dig into. Let's see. There wasn't a whole lot of difference in plot lines, really. I mean, this game was fairly linear. Not that I don't think it suffered from being linear, though, in that fashion. You know what I mean? Does anybody think it's...
The pitch was you are in the military, you have a specific mission, you complete that mission, and
Yeah.
while we could have run off and into the wilderness and tried to start a commune, it wasn't really the point.
Yeah. I don't think our enjoyment suffered because it was linear. If there was any of it. I think there's a lot of stuff that happened that your characters all feel personally responsible for. So I think we've actually accidentally covered all of the community questions. Good for us.
Yay.
Yes, another objective achieved. you guys are ending your campaign with full objectives achieved, which is great. Casualties were fairly high at the same time, so I think we had a really good campaign here. Let's see. Talked about Cypher Shine Sonzaku. I do want to mention, just for, just the general peanut gallery, Sonzaku, he also, watched his father die in battle with Tall, because he was there when that happened.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah, the displacement of his people, he's got a personal rage, though, about it. So, not something that came up very often, though, because, like many people in a strange land, he hid behind the I don't speak Kruik a lot. And when he did speak Kruik, he was very short about it. So, yeah. Any last...
He feels like the sort of character who's going to show up in Chapter 3 or Chapter 4, grown up, and is either going to be a critical NPC. Well, it's going to be a critical NPC, but either in the fashion of somebody that is well loved, or that's somebody that is a liability, and that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun to see that.
It
that
depends on how much contact. I think, well, not to big up myself, but I think it depends on how much contact Ben has with him and how much he is able to get Matsumoto to chill the fuck out.
Here's an ice pack. Relax. Here's some tea. Relax.
Here's have a good berry. Calm down.
Yeah. I suppose, are there any last minute questions before we get ready to sign off? Is there any burning, itching question that really needs to see a doctor before we sign off, but we're all too afraid to ask it?
How did you manage to not have a coronary with all of the drama that happened kind of in the midpoint of our campaign?
It was hard. It was really hard. There were moments where I was ready to throw the campaign into the trash heap and either A, start over, or B, mark it as an abject failure and move on. I was very stressed because it seemed to me that while not everyone was angling to do so, there were quite a few parties that were either A, not fucking getting it, or B, actively sabotaging it, or C, both. And that's really hard to run a game as a DM. And that goes for any DM. If you're trying to run a game and you've got people at your table who are just fucking around, those people are really not just making it difficult for you to run your game, they're also making it difficult for your other players to enjoy the game that they signed up for. And that was part of the problem that I had, was I had a few people who were already here who had signed up for a game and were excited to play it, i.e. Lee and Darrow, and weren't really getting my all out of it because I was busy trying to rein in what was happening and trying to hold things together because things kept falling apart, not because of other stuff that was happening in the campaign and off screen, through no fault of their own, right? Part of the problem was some individuals had a hard time handling the stakes, and other individuals had a hard time handling the difficulty level, and other individuals had a hard time with the decisions of others, right? And couldn't handle the pressure, right? And that once that became a serious problem, I started having to make hard decisions. Those were, you either gotta knock it off or you gotta go. And it turned out, it came around to you gotta go because you're making this. I'm getting contacted at 3 a.m. And by these individuals, or it's like, that aside, like people aren't showing up to games on time or at all. I'm just like, all right, here I am twisting in the wind. It sucked. So it was hard. Is the answer. It was very hard. I almost threw this campaign in the trash heap. I'm glad I didn't. And I want to thank Lee and I want to thank Alathana, and D and Apostate and Darrow for sticking with me through this. But Lee, I especially want to thank you for bringing in 2 fabulous players who helped save this game. And Alathana, I want to thank you for sticking it out because you were in the middle of a lot of that bullshit. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah, that's why one of the reasons why when Proxia went down, I was like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, this sucks. On the other hand, it's kind of a relief because all of that bits of stuff that had been like semi-romantic and stuff like that, and all that baggage that was from that drama was like, okay, that's gone now. I get a character that isn't saddled with that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's good. I mean, that's good. But I do want to thank you guys for sticking with it. I know it was hard. I know there were times where it was just like, CJ seems to be really under a lot of pressure, and he's probably freaking out back there. It was a lot. It was a lot. I'm human too. I'm not always as stoic as I might seem to be sometimes. So I appreciate it because you guys made this campaign happen, and you helped carry it over the finish line, and you definitely rescued it from a terrible death that it was going to suffer. So hats off to you guys. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all had fun. I really do. Because I had fun once we managed to iron shit out. So
It was definitely an enjoyable time. Also, many thanks to your better half for letting you run these things, even though we know you run yourself ragged and she has to tell you to stop sometimes. So many thanks to Gabby for letting us borrow you occasionally.
she my wife is a dream and I love her very much. She's so good to me. She also quietly tells me when I need to take a month off. And I do listen to her when that happens. Usually it's just like, I will kill you if you don't take this month off because you're gonna die. So, I took February off. I think last year I took January or something. And that was in the middle of all the drama. She's just like, you need to take the whole month off. I'm like, okay, something like that. So, but yeah, she does get a round of applause for her contributions. Definitely keeping me sane and grounded, and reminding me to take time off. So, I think everybody here is in one of the 2 upcoming, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Indubitably.
So we have Alathana and Darrow are going into Bib. You guys are breaking off and going into Bib. And D, Apostate, and Lee, you guys are breaking off. I hate that this is becoming a thing. This session, the rallying cry for chat is Scrumgore tongues for X or Y or Z. So, because I have this animated gif of this Scrumgore going, and it's just...
The people have spoken.
The people have spoken. Scrumgore tongues for all the thanks and love from my wife. It's really unhinged. I personally blame Data Slice for this. Scrumgore tongues for forever.
Yeah, the other nice thing, as you mentioned, we'll be continuing on to other campaigns. Let's not forget to give the plug to Lee and the folks that are in the other currently still ongoing campaign.
Oh
So
yes, we do
while
have.
you're waiting for things to start back up and etc., waiting for
Yeah.
Bib, waiting for those of us to show up for Bib and things like that, check out Door of Eternity. Learn a lot of cool things about this world that you would have never imagined would be the case.
Yeah. Door of
Hey,
Eternity.
you might even make a trip to the moon.
Door of Eternity is on Saturday. So, but Lee, D, and Apostate, you guys are going to be in Kingdom of Darkness, and that's starting up first. So, you know, some of you still have to get me stuff so I can finish your stuff, right?
Hi, I'm some of you.
Yeah, I'm also some of you.
Yeah.
Listen. Shout out Data Slice who ran me through. I work in marketing. I have met designers who have nowhere near the professionalism and nowhere near the speed and efficiency.
She's
Made
so
me a character
fucking
token.
fast.
It was like I have sat in calls with people who have worked in design and art for 20 fucking years and were completely like did not know what they were doing. And I was like, holy fucking shit, this is crazy.
She's so
but
fast.
she made me a token, and I think it is sitting in my messages, like waiting to be approved and sent to you. So that is completely on me and not at all on Data Slice. I want to clear her name.
I know, I'm aware because she tells me stuff. But you also have to relook at the map and those locations again for your backstory.
Yes, I super do.
So while you were ahead of Apostate, now you're behind because Apostate has a fully approved backstory, even if Apostate doesn't have art. So now you're behind him.
What are you saying to me?
When did you make a backstory? You didn't have that a week ago.
Oh, you know.
So Apostate has a fully complete backstory. He's ready to go. No character art, but that's okay. Lee, your dream, all your shit's done. You're ready to play. D, you know where you stand. Darrow, you know where you stand. And Alethana, you know where you stand. So
Yeah, but I'm not in as much of a hurry because we have a month.
you have more time. I have not set your date for your 0.5 yet. But these three have less time because their 0.5, this brings us back to our schedule, is let's see, scroll back up, on the 12th. So that's, yeah, that's exactly 2 weeks from today. That's your deadline. So you got 2 weeks to get that stuff to me. And then we're starting to play in exactly a month, in exactly 4 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. In my defense, I have had, work has been a bitch. So
I'm not roasting you. You're roasting.
I'm roasting me.
You're roasting yourself. I didn't drag your name over the coals. You piped up.
I super did. No, I super did. You're right. You're right.
So, but a little public shame never hurts, right? It's what they said.
All for the bit. All for the bit.
All for the bit. It's a funny bit. I'm under no illusions that your stuff will be done on time by the 0.5 and we'll be all ready to go, and it'll just be one of those breezy, easy, beautiful cover girls where we just kind of talk about the campaign a little bit, make sure the schedule's still good, lament if it isn't, and be excited for each other and get ready to play. Right? That's what it's going to be. We're just going to meet. We're going to talk about it real quick. We're going to iron out the last few things, which is like, a couple of things we need to roll on, and then we'll be done. We'll
all of our get our prison bods.
Yeah, your prison stuff. Yeah, so the audience knows that you guys are starting in prisons. That'll be it. That'll be fun. For Bib though. Bib has suffered from, it's kind of circling development hell right now because I've begun mapping, but I haven't been as productive for a few reasons. Firstly, I'm coming off of that heinous cold I had at the beginning of January. I barely have the cough now. Still have it, but it's, I'm not as fast as I once was. The second thing is There's a lot going on at work. And third thing is, my mother's been laid up. I've been kind of keeping an eye on her for the past week. She had a medical thing. She's doing a lot better. But she's
okay.
yeah, she's good. She was good. It was a optional thing that she needed to get done for her own quality of life, and doing a lot better. So, been with us for about a week. It's kind of been where my priority has been. But it'll be back to the grindstone when I have more time. I should be able to work all through March, get it done, and then we'll be looking at a 0.5 in April, hopefully, and then a launch date in either late April or early May. Baptizing. A little bit of a late start in comparison to Kingdom of Darkness. I fully had intended launch them both at the same time, but nothing ever works out as intended. That's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think that's enough yapping tonight. We're gonna put this chapter to a close. This is the Door of Eternity doesn't really exist in chapter 1 or in chapter 2. It's kind of in its own space. So this is the end of chapter 1 here. I want to thank everybody for coming out and playing. I want to thank everybody for watching and hanging out with us. All of my players did a fabulous job. None of them are paid. All of them do this for their own enjoyment, or because they like the way it hurts, or because they're hopelessly addicted. So, that's their thing. That's not my thing. I just enjoy running a good game with a good narrative. So, tell your friends, tell your family, spread it around the internet. I'm happy to have more people come by and join the Scrum Gang, I think is what we're going to call chat. The Scrum Gang.
Yes!
Yeah, Scrum Gang for life. So that's pretty much it. The tongue is the gang sign? Oh no. That's pretty much it for...
What have you done?
That's pretty much it for us. We're gonna go ahead and end stream now. We'll see you again in a few days for Door of Eternity. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.